Rebirth is a Russian tycoon. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 101, Counter-Strike is a total hit. Seeing Blizzard employees so helpful, Maweli couldn't help but clench his fists on the other end of the phone. Very good. How is the Battle.net platform tested? Chairman Maweli, the Battle.net platform system has been tested, and it depends on your decision, Mike Mikoyan said to Maweli with confidence. In this life, Blizzard did not build a Battle.net platform. Fortunately, Maweli discovered it in time and sent people to develop it. And what Mike meant by listening to Maweli's decision was to see whether the game's internal test time would be launched in advance. Well, then arrange for Counter-Strike to be tested next week, Maweli said in a resounding voice on the phone. Success or failure depends on this one move, and this battle is very important to him. Okay, Chairman Maweli. Mike Mikoyan also gave a very solemn reply. Whether the Blizzard game company in this life can turn around depends on how much of a sensation the Counter-Strike internal test can cause. A week later, Wednesday, August 18th, 8 p.m., Maweli's Counter-Strike game will be officially launched on the Battle.net platform. When it was almost 8 o'clock, those players who bought CDK were waiting in front of the computer early, ready to try out this long-awaited game as soon as possible. When the time reached 8 o'clock, Maweli asked Blizzard to build 10 servers in advance, and they appeared on the Battle.net platform on time. Almost as soon as these 10 servers appeared, the first 2 were immediately crowded by players. Many people rushed to enter the game, create IDs, and then choose their own camps and character images. Maweli's Counter-Strike game is different from the previous life. He absorbed the advantages of World of Warcraft and divided the players into police camp and bandit camp. In this way, when the two sides fight, they will have a strong sense of mission and honor. It can also promote the player's desire to fight and consume. For each internal test CDK, the system will send an internal test gift package. When the player opens the gift package, he will randomly receive weapons, ammunition, bulletproof vests and other props. After receiving these props, the most exciting part of the game is finally about to begin. That is, the players of the police camp fight against the players of the bandit camp. This kind of game that simulates the exchange of fire and fighting on the battlefield can really stimulate the secretion of adrenaline in players. The sneak attacks, misses, consecutive kills, and beheadings during the game can all touch the sensitive nerves of every player. Headshot, double kill, multi-kill. With these consecutive kill sounds, plus the real and exciting gun battle scenes, almost every player who has experienced the internal test of Counter-Strike is deeply attracted by this game. And it is the kind that cannot extricate oneself. This makes the games launched by other game companies at the same time all be put into the cold palace by Blizzard. Many people hang out on the Battle.net platform all day long, either waiting in line to enter the game, or fighting in the game, and they don't even have time to go to the toilet. In those internet cafes across the United States, 1 out of 10 computers must be playing Counter-Strike. The key is that this is just a limited beta test, and it is not time for the public beta test. I believe that by then, there will be only a few people in the entire internet cafe who don't play Counter-Strike. Chairman Maweli, the game has been in the beta test for 3 days, and the server performance is good, and the feedback from players is also very good, including some loopholes in the game. We are also counting them, and we will modify them when the game is updated. In addition, because the market response is very good, many players who didn't buy CDK at that time left messages on our homepage asking us when we will open the public beta test. On the phone, Mike Mikoyan reported to Maweli the operation status of the past few days. In summary, the players who grabbed the CDK at the time are now enjoying it and can't stop. And those who didn't grab the CDK are so hungry that they want to smash the keyboard. The public beta test time will be set for 2 months later. As for the public beta test number of the Counter-Strike game, it will be available for sale online in the next 2 days, and the limited number is 5 million. The price remains the same as before. $28 per copy. Maweli is determined to carry out the hunger marketing to the end. Only in this way can we grasp people's competitive psychology. 5 million copies? Okay, Chairman Maweli, I'll arrange it right away. Mike Mikoyan said enthusiastically on the phone. The total price of 5 million public beta accounts is $140 million. Adding the 500,000 CDKs for the internal beta, that's $154 million. Such a terrifying ability to attract money is very outrageous. After all, the Blizzard team only spent $3.5 million to develop Counter-Strike, which also included the cost of C4 bombing tanks. 2 days later, the news of the pre-sale public beta number of Counter-Strike spread. This news immediately made those players who didn't get the CDK overjoyed. They were looking forward to it, waiting for the public beta number to be officially put on sale. At 4 PM on August 25th, the Blizzard official website refreshed the announcement information of 5 million public beta numbers of Counter-Strike, and it also attached the pre-sale web link. Many netizens and players who saw this message couldn't wait to click on the pre-sale page. Then, as if they were scrambling to grab something, they frantically bought the Counter-Strike public beta number, which was priced at $28. Moreover, some players who got the public beta number left messages on the message board. Haha. I finally got what I was waiting for. I have been watching my friends playing it these days, and it makes me feel so uncomfortable. I went to an internet cafe and found that many people were playing this game. I felt that the graphics were very exciting and quite fun. I really hope that the public beta time will come soon. 5 million public beta numbers were snapped up in just 3 days, and a full 750,000 copies were snapped up. It directly created a profit of $21 million for Maweli's Blizzard. 2 days later, Blizzard's president, Mike Mikoyan, called Maweli excitedly and said, "Chairman Maweli, I have very good news for you. As of 12 o'clock today, 1.3 million copies of the public beta of Counter-Strike have been sold." According to this popularity, it is estimated that within a month, all 5 million account authorizations will be sold out. Mike Mikoyan was very excited when he spoke. He was obviously stimulated by such a good result. Since Maweli bought Blizzard from Vivendi and then led the company to rise again, Mike Mikoyan's admiration for him has become deeper and deeper. Well, but you did a good job. 1 month is already very timely. At about that time, the funding application of the Central Navigation Equipment Design Bureau was also submitted to the Navy headquarters. By the way, Chairman Maweli, we have received some other good news here. Several countries in Europe and Asia have sent people to contact us. They said they want to discuss the agency of the copyright of the Counter-Strike game. Chapter 102 Russian Naval Headquarters. Counter-Strike is very popular in North America, which naturally makes game companies in other countries discover business opportunities. So one by one, they all sent people to negotiate the agency rights, give Blizzard agency fees and dividends. Of course, whether it succeeds or not, or to what extent the conditions are discussed, it all depends on Maweli's nod of approval. What countries are there in Asia? He asked indifferently on the phone. In Asia, there are mainly 3 countries: China, South Korea, and Japan. Chairman Maweli, Mike Mikoyan answered truthfully. Which game companies in China have contacted the agent? Maweli is still more concerned about his compatriots on the other side of the ocean. China? Let me see. There are Tencent NetEase Games, Shanda Games, and 9 City Games, these 4 game companies. Although Mike Mikoyan didn't know why Maweli was particularly concerned about the Chinese market, but now he follows Maweli's lead in everything. Tencent? So soon, you put your hand in the game industry? Maweli couldn't help but think in his heart. He still vaguely remembered Jing's rejection. In his previous life, Tencent's gaming division was only established in 2003. Unexpectedly, in this life, with the $32 million from South African newspapers, Tencent entered the gaming industry 3 years earlier. In South Korea and Japan, we can directly review agents and negotiate terms with them. As for the Chinese market, we must develop it ourselves. Maweli said simply and clearly on the phone. The domestic gaming market is quite profitable. instead of looking for agents, letting them mess around, and sitting back to enjoy the share. It is better for Blizzard to develop it in person and directly earn 100% of the revenue. Anyway, as long as the game is well made, there is no need to worry about not making money in China. Mawei is very clear about this. Okay, Chairman, I understand. I will arrange someone to do it. Mike Mikoyan said respectfully. Well, let's do it this way for now, Mawei said and hung up the phone. With the income of 5 million public beta numbers, he finally survived. And as Counter-Strike spreads around the world, the revenue will definitely be 3 times, 5 times, or even 10 times what it is now. After 3 weeks, all 5 million public beta numbers were snapped up by players. And Mawei's Blizzard has signed agency contracts with game companies in several countries. This has directly added $150 million to Mawei's bank account. The deposit instantly turned back to $275 million. I can continue to spend money. Ivan, how much research and development funds do the scientists at the Central Navigation Equipment Design Bureau need? Has the Navy said so? Mawei called the butler to the room and asked him about the new frigate project. Master, the Navy hasn't mentioned it yet, but as far as I know, it shouldn't be a small amount. Judging from the Navy's budget this year, they should find it difficult to afford this expense. The butler answered truthfully. 5 days later, housekeeper Ivan came back to Mawei's room and said to him, Master, I just received a message from the Navy. They asked you to meet at the Navy headquarters this Friday. The scientists from the Central Navigation Equipment Design Bureau will also be there. The Russian Navy headquarters, that is, the Russian Federation Navy Fleet, is an important part of the Russian Federation Armed Forces. It is much higher in specifications than the Northern Fleet that Mawei went to last time. To be precise, it is the symbol of the highest honor of the Russian Navy. Okay, I got it. Mawei raised his eyebrows. He didn't expect that he could play so well and so smoothly in this life. One day, he will be invited to the Russian Navy headquarters. I just don't know what rank will be responsible for receiving him this time. Is it a major general? Or a lieutenant general? The Russian Navy headquarters is located in St. Petersburg. The commander-in-chief is Admiral Vladimir Serovy. The chief of the general staff is Admiral Felix Nikolay. Commands the 4 major fleets of the Russian Northern Fleet, the Pacific Fleet, the Black Sea Fleet, and the Baltic Fleet, as well as the Kaliningrad military cluster to which the Caspian Fleet and the Baltic Fleet belong. Due to the disintegration of the Soviet Union and Russia's continued economic downturn before the mid-1990s, the combat effectiveness of the Russian Navy was severely weakened. Basically, no new ships were put into service, and limited funds were only used for the shipbuilding plans that were already underway during the Soviet era. Despite this, a large number of shipbuilding projects were still discontinued due to funding reasons. The maintenance of existing equipment is also a big problem. Many naval equipment has a low improvement rate and frequent accidents due to the lack of effective management and maintenance. So, when Mawei said that he was willing to fund the Russian Navy to develop a new generation of frigates, the Navy headquarters approved his proposal at the first time. Almost from the drafting of the charter to the department review, there was no hindrance and all were given the go-ahead. And the superiors also specifically instructed the Northern Fleet, which proposed this project, to make sure that the research and development was carried out smoothly, and they must not be anticlimactic and end up with nothing. After all, this project is watched by many bigwigs. For example, Commander-in-Chief General Serovy. For example, Defense Minister General Alnov. 5 days later, in St. Petersburg, in front of the Russian Navy headquarters, Mawei, received by an officer, took a military jeep and slowly drove into the heavily guarded military area. Compared with the last time he went to the Northern Fleet, the scale of the Navy headquarters is more magnificent. There are also more checkpoints on the road. The Russian Navy flags and the naval soldiers in uniforms everywhere made Mawei feel like he was in a military movie. After about half an hour, the jeep slowly stopped in front of a building. At this time, a naval colonel wearing a naval officer uniform with 2 bars and 3 stars embroidered on his shoulders appeared in front of Mawei in a military posture. Mr. Mawei, long time no see. This naval colonel was Colonel Yevnigan, who received Mawei in the Northern Fleet. But today, as the vanguard of his superiors, he deliberately waited for Mawei's arrival in front of the building. It shows that the superiors attach great importance to this project, which is very unusual. Invisibly, it also caused a certain amount of pressure on the investor Mawei. "Hello, Colonel Yevnigan." Mawei got off the jeep with a smile. Since the last time he sent 2 Grisha-class frigates to the Northern Fleet, his relationship with the Northern Fleet has gradually become more familiar. "Well, let's go up. Lieutenant General Mikov will be here soon," Colonel Yevnigan said to Mawei with a serious face. The Lieutenant General Nikov he mentioned was the senior general in charge of the research and development of the new frigate. He was 2 levels higher than Yevnigan. P.S. I would like to ask for a recommendation vote. It will be on the shelves soon. Chapter 103 Guardian Class Guided Missile Frigate. Mawei nodded after hearing this, and then followed Yevnigan to the reception room of the Navy headquarters, to wait for the arrival of the Vice Admiral. Almost 10 minutes later, a spirited old Russian man with wrinkles on his face entered the reception room with a dignified demeanor. The old man was wearing a naval officer's uniform, and the military emblem on his shoulders looked extremely gorgeous. One could tell at a glance that his military rank was very high. "Lieutenant General Nikov, you are here." As soon as Colonel Yevnigan saw the old man appear, he immediately stood up from his seat and saluted him. "Hello, Lieutenant General Nikov." Out of courtesy, Mawei naturally stood up and greeted the military leader. Lieutenant General Mikov first saluted Yevnigan and then turned to look at Mawei standing in front of him. That look seemed to see through him, making people feel a little trembling. "Hello, Mr. Mawei, I heard that you are the proposer of this frigate research and development project." Lieutenant General Mikov looked at Mawei with dignity. The old man had killed people on the battlefield. He was a real tough guy, unlike those rookies who grew up in military academies and looked good but were useless. "Yes, Lieutenant General Nikov." This was the first time that Mawei had talked to a lieutenant general level officer, and it was such a close one-on-one. So he would not be too ostentatious and would speak practically. "Let me introduce you. These 2 are scientists from the Central Navigation Equipment Design Bureau, Dr. Gromov and Dr. Kvashnin. They are sent here to be responsible for the research and development of new frigates." Lieutenant General Mikov was decisive and did not like to drag his feet. Not long after meeting Mawei, he called in the scientists waiting outside the door. Mawei was a poor student in his previous life. When he was a student, he envied those with good academic performance. In this life, he could actually study in the same class with the doctors from the Central Navigation Bureau. He was considered to be very capable. "Hello, Mr. Mawei. Thank you for your support for our Russian Navy." Doctors Gromov and Kvashnin, wearing old-fashioned loose suits and glasses with very high degrees, they expressed their gratitude to Mawei as soon as they came up. Because they had wanted to develop a new type of frigate for a long time, but the Navy has been short of research funds in recent years, so they have no chance to realize their wish. "You're welcome. I'm also fulfilling my obligations as a citizen," Mawei replied very humbly. "Mr. Mawei, you are too modest. With your awareness, few businessmen in our country can do it." Dr. Gromov said highly of Mawei, and what he said was true. Mawei smiled after hearing this and didn't say anything else, because he knew that the focus of today's meeting was not to be commended by the Navy. It was to see how much money he could pay out to fund research and development. Sure enough, not long after, Doctors Gromov and Kvashnin quietly exchanged glances with Vice Admiral Nikov. Then, at the Lieutenant Admiral's slight nod, Dr. Gromov adjusted his glasses and asked Mawei, "Mr. Mawei, several doctors including Kvashnin and I plan to develop a replacement warship for the Glisha-class light frigate. It is codenamed 20,380, with a tonnage of 500 to 2,000 and a Guardian-class level. It is a multi-purpose light missile frigate. The ship is equipped with 30 to 100mm caliber artillery, as well as supporting radar and optoelectronic fire control systems. It can also quickly replace weapons and equipment on board according to mission requirements, such as anti-submarine equipment. The stern of the ship is equipped with relevant equipment to confiscate and store illegal facilities. It can carry helicopters and small boats to hunt ships with a speed of less than 25 knots. After hearing the doctor's introduction to the new frigate, Mawei knew that the real show was about to begin. Before he could respond, Dr. Gromov continued to say to him, "Mr. Mawei, we estimate that the research and development funds for the 20,380 missile frigate will cost about $53 million US. Excuse me, how much can you fund us?" $53 million US was more than $2 million more expensive than the cost of a 956 type destroyer in 2000. It is definitely difficult for the Russian Navy to come up with such a huge amount of money. So it depends on how much Mawei is willing to pay. Now the big guys above are all eyeing this project. If Mawei is sincere and pays very little, he will not be able to mix in the Russian Navy in the future. After all, this proposal was first made by him, including the subsequent orders for frigates, destroyers, and even nuclear-powered submarines. His North Sea shipyard is estimated to not get much. But if he pays too much, it will be troublesome and may make some big guys unhappy. Lieutenant General Mikov looked at Mawei with sparkling eyes. As a soldier, he actually doesn't like dealing with businessmen, because in his cognition, almost all businessmen are profit-seeking and shrewd people who only care about their own interests. The two frigates that Mawei donated before cost only $6.4 million US. It can't be compared with the huge and expensive research and development funds. So now is the important moment to truly test whether he loves his country and supports Russia's national defense. However, just when Lieutenant General Nikov looked at Mawei said directly, "Lieutenant General Nikov, I have no objection to how much your fleet is willing to pay for this $53 million US. Anyway, the rest will be borne by my Mikoyan family." As soon as Mawei's calm voice fell, Lieutenant General Nikov, who was sitting in front of him, blinked his eyes and felt a little surprised. He didn't expect the young man in front of him to be so sophisticated and courageous to say these words. And he said it very well, which would not embarrass the Navy or feel that he was being robbed of the limelight. It would not make him look stingy. Instead, it highlights his sincerity in supporting national defense. "Oh, really? Mr. Mawei, if my Navy headquarters only paid $3 million US in the end, are you, the Mikoyan family, willing to bear the remaining $50 million US? Lieutenant General Mikov asked deliberately. These bigwigs in the military like to do these things. No problem. Mawei knew that the other party asked this deliberately. Even if the Russian Navy is poor, it is impossible to pay only a fraction. After all, soldiers have to save face. They represent the Russian Federation. After hearing this, Lieutenant General Nikov clapped his hands with a faint smile. "Very good. Young man, you are very good." "Thank you, Lieutenant General Nikov," Mawei replied politely. "As for the project funds, let's each pay half," Lieutenant General Mikov said, setting a limit. "Okay. Things are exactly as Mawei expected. The Navy will definitely not pay only $3 million US. That would be too embarrassing. Now that both sides pay half, Mawei's North Sea shipyard has an absolute resource advantage. When the new frigate is successfully developed, he will receive international orders in the future. Even if it has not been successfully developed, with Mawei's economic mind and the relationship he has established with the Russian Navy, Mawei can also get the ship order. Because some time ago, the White Hats in Dubai introduced him to a super big customer. That is India, a military power that loves to buy military equipment everywhere. To be precise, it is the Indian Navy, which has a need to buy warships recently, but they haven't figured out which country to buy them from. The reason why the White Hats have this inside information is that there are many Indians with deep backgrounds in Dubai, and they also have connections with the military. It just so happens that the White Hats know Mawei and know that he has a Russian military background and his family runs a military shipyard. So the news went around, and finally this demand of the Indian Navy was passed on to Mawei. The Indian Navy in the parallel world has a relatively unfamiliar diplomatic relationship with the Russian Navy and needs an intermediary as an introduction. Chapter 104 Soviet-class battleship. Of course, based on his understanding of Indians in his previous life, Mawei would not suggest that the Russian Navy sell the most advanced equipment to them. At best, they are ships that are about to be eliminated or replaced, and the price is even higher. After leaving the Navy headquarters, Mawey immediately asked the butler to send someone to contact the Indian Navy and invite them to Russia to discuss the order of frigates. Originally, orders between the two countries' militaries were generally not allowed to be participated by individuals. But Mawey, as an intermediary, introduced the deal and sponsored the Russian Navy with $26.5 million for project research and development. So the Navy made an exception to let him participate, and also hoped that he would try his best to promote orders so that Indians would not buy warships from other countries, which would be bad. In return, a large part of the Indian Navy's warship orders will definitely flow into Mawey's North Sea shipyard. At that time, it depends on how big the appetite of the Indian military is and how many warships it can eat. Half a month later, a Boeing 747 aircraft flying from India landed smoothly at St. Petersburg Airport. This plane is India's Air Force One, equipped with anti-electronic interference equipment, anti-missile systems and aerial refueling facilities. It is usually a special plane used by the President and Prime Minister of India when they visit far away. However, it also carries out commercial flights or is used by other departments. After all, the Indian government is not very rich, especially at that time. When the Boeing 747 plane landed smoothly on the airport track, the Russian military, who had been waiting on the platform for a long time, drove a Tiger armored vehicle and slowly drove under the plane. At this time, the plane's gangway came down, and an old man in a white military uniform, with a gloomy look in his eyes and several silver medals on his chest, slowly walked down the plane. Look at the military emblem on the old man's shoulder, 2 swords and 4 stars, plus a red and silver medal, a proper admiral level. This kind of honor is only awarded to the Chief of the Navy General Staff in India. Lieutenant General Nikov, who was in charge of the reception, came out of the Tiger armored vehicle with a serious expression, then stepped forward to shake hands with the old man and said, "Admiral Sunibar, welcome to St. Petersburg. It stands to reason that, if the other country sends a general, then the country should also be received by the general. But from the perspective of Russia's military strength, the rank of lieutenant general is almost equal to the other side's general, so there is nothing wrong with this reception. Hello, Lieutenant General Nikov." Sunibar stretched out his hand and shook hands with Nikov. The two exchanged greetings at the airport, and then took a Tiger armored vehicle convoy to visit Mawey's North Sea shipyard. Since Mawey acquired the North Sea shipyard, the efficiency of the factory has been getting better and better, and the appearance has been renovated a lot more than before. For example, the originally mottled and rusty iron doors have all been painted with new paint. The originally stagnant production has also become thriving and full of vitality. Lieutenant General Nikov, your Russian Navy shipyard is doing really well. When the convoy drove to the North Sea shipyard, Admiral Sunibar praised in the car, "The shipbuilding industry in India is really too poor, and the domestic frigates are in a short period of time and cannot be compared with Russia. The 3,600-ton Brahmaputra class frigate, which started construction in 1989, has only started to serve this year, and the frigate is still propelled by steam turbines. It is so outdated that Admiral Sunibar has lost face." Nikov looked at Mawey's North Sea shipyard and nodded. It is rare that Mawey can make the shipyard so colorful when the overall Russian military industry is in a downturn. It's pretty good, Admiral Sunibar. But this shipyard does not belong to our Russian Navy. Nikov had to clarify. "Oh, it's not affiliated with your Navy? It was privatized?" Admiral Sunibar raised his eyebrows in surprise. A privatized shipyard can actually run so well. It seems that the operator behind it is very capable and extraordinary. Yes, Lieutenant General Nikov said, pointing to the dock not far away. Under the huge dock, in addition to the naval officers standing, there was also a Russian young man in a suit, who stood out in the crowd. When Admiral Sunibar and Lieutenant General Nikov got off the armored vehicle one after another, Nikov solemnly introduced the accompanying officers and the operator of the North Sea shipyard, Mawey, to the Admiral from India. "Admiral Sunibar, let me introduce you. This is the chairman of our North Sea shipyard, Mr. Mawey. Don't look at his young age, he is very capable." Since the last interview at the Navy headquarters, Lieutenant General Nikov has become more and more appreciative of Mawey. including this Indian order. It was also Mawey who brokered it through his connections. So Nikov must give him enough face. "Hello, Mr. Mawey, your shipyard is doing well," Admiral Sunibar said, extending his right hand to Mawey. Mawey, with a calm expression, smiled and said, "Thank you, Admiral Sunibar." He also extended his hand and shook hands with the admiral. To be honest, Mawey himself did not expect that things would develop to this extent. Just a few days ago, he was chatting and laughing with the vice admiral at the naval headquarters. Today, he is in his own shipyard, receiving the naval chief of staff from India. This feels like a dream. If Mawey hadn't seen so many naval generals and naval soldiers around him, he would have really thought that he was dreaming and hadn't woken up. "Mr. Mawey, what kind of warships are you building in this dock now?" After shaking hands, Sunibar became interested in the two big guys in the dock. Those two are the Grisha-class V-type frigates under construction. Compared to these two 1,200-ton light frigates, Admiral Sunibar, our North Sea shipyard currently has a 55,000-ton battleship left over from the Soviet era. "I wonder if you are interested in taking a look?" Mawey asked Sunibar with a smile. At the same time, while he was asking the question, Lieutenant General Nikov also whispered a few words to a rear admiral next to him. Then the naval commander took the order and left. It seemed that the two sides had discussed it before and were now coordinating something. "Soviet-class 55,000-ton battleship? I'm very interested in this, Mr. Mawey," Admiral Sunibar said immediately with interest. Although he did not participate in World War II, he admired the battleships and heavy cruisers of that period. Unfortunately, with the emergence of aircraft carrier battle groups, battleships and heavy cruisers, which only focus on heavy artillery, have all been eliminated. At present, almost none of them can be seen in the world. "It's in that dock over there." Mawey pointed to the largest dock in the distance. In order to impress the Indian Navy and facilitate the order transaction, he found a Soviet-class battleship that had been retired for a long time. Then he asked the workers to repaint it and restore it to the greatest extent. Although the North Sea shipyard is currently unable to build aircraft carriers and nuclear-powered submarines, but it is still possible to renovate battleships and heavy cruisers. The reason why Mawey wants to do this is not to let the Indian Navy buy the battleship with a lot of money. Instead, he wants to let this 55,000-ton battleship go to sea again. Then let the Russian Navy drive the 3,000-ton Talwar stealth frigate to completely sink the battleship. Demonstrate the powerful strength of the Russian Navy. The visual impact formed at that time will definitely be extremely shocking. Just like recreating the battlefield of World War II, it is unforgettable, and it can also promote the order transactions between the two parties. Of course, during the sinking process, the explosion of the shells will definitely kill and stun the fish in the sea. So Mawey also specially prepared 2 fishing boats so that the dead fish can be cleaned up and the stunned fish can be brought to the table. Chapter 105. Remarks on the release. I'm updating this book with a lot of difficulty. This book will be on the shelves tomorrow at noon. I'm very nervous and even did not sleep well last night. I'm afraid that the results will fail and I will not be motivated to write. Before the book is put on the shelves, I want to thank my editor Wu-Tang for his support all the way. Next, I want to thank the book friends who rewarded, voted, and left messages to support this book. Thank you. The author has been watching quietly every time you reward, vote, leave a message, and say chapters. There are many things I want to say, but I guess you don't like to hear it. As long as I work hard and update it, helpless face. The author read the message at noon yesterday. Many book friends said that, if they don't update 10 or 20 chapters on the shelves, they will go to read pirated copies, and they won't even give the first order. To be honest, I'm really sad after reading it. I hope this is not true, otherwise I want to die. This book is written very slowly. I can only type 500 words in an hour. And after writing a chapter, I have to repeatedly ponder the plot and try to write it more reasonably. It is not the kind of brainless Xiaobei when Shenheo routine, where villains come out to step on the protagonist's face at any time. There are not many super rich novels to read on Kidian.com, and there are also few super rich novels with new ideas. There are many novels that are often abandoned, discontinued, or have bad endings. So the author would like to say, everyone, please cherish your life. I won't be sad anymore, but I will talk about the updates after the new book is put on the shelves. It will be put on the shelves at 12:10 noon tomorrow, and 5 chapters will be updated. If the subscription results are surprisingly good, 3 to 5 more chapters will be updated. Then maintain 3 updates every day. In short, if you subscribe, I will work hard. If you reward me, I will work hard. Liver. The following is a list of thanks. Thanks to the book friends who rewarded and supported the new book before it was put on the shelves. Your takeaway, Eternal Buddha, Yan Ian Mo, book friend 160,225,194,119,594, book friend 201805041538277750. Poppetry in the Door, Lonely Yunzai Arxio, King 861,006, book friend 201810132023296664, Dhamma, Super Zyadu, Yi Malang, Kayanayu, Evil in the Pen, HV 587. Longzingayu Sadness, Children's Songs for Everyone to Read, Death Zero, Tang Tang who likes to read novels. There are too many book friends to thank, and I can't copy them all. Thank you again for your support. Chapter 106, Shikali Medium Range Ship 2 Air Missile. When Maweli led Admiral Suni Bal and other Indian naval commanders to the largest dock of the North Sea shipyard, they saw a giant warship about 300 meters long and 35 meters wide, which was renovated and presented to everyone. The battleship has a standard displacement of 55,000 tons, which is almost the same as the displacement of an aircraft carrier. The draft is 10.1 meters, and the main turret is 3 quadruple 406mm heavy guns. The anti-aircraft turret is 6 twin 130mm flat guns and 4 quadruple 45mm anti-aircraft machine guns. The maximum speed can reach 27 knots. The side armor is 380mm thick, the horizontal armor is 50 plus 150mm, and the main engine power is 140,000 horsepower. Admiral Suni Bal and other Indian naval commanders looked at the behemoth not far away with amazing eyes. Compared with the 1,000-ton and 2,000-ton light frigates of his own country, the 55,000-ton battleship in the North Sea shipyard is obviously more majestic and domineering. Mr. Maweli, this should be the number 6 battleship designed by the 1st Central Special Ship Bureau of the Soviet Union, right? Admiral Suni Bal, after all, is the Chief of Staff of the Indian Navy. He can remember the relevant information about the battleships in the world with just one look. Yes, Admiral Suni Bal, this is indeed the number 6 battleship built at that time. Now our shipyard has restored it for his use. Maweli answered simply and clearly. After listening to his narration, Admiral Suni Bal was a little confused and turned to Maweli and asked, for his use? Mr. Maweli, although this battleship has fierce firepower, hasn't it been eliminated by various countries now? The displacement of battleships and heavy cruisers is comparable to that of aircraft carriers. But in terms of combat effectiveness, aircraft carriers are far superior to the former. After all, their aircraft carriers have fighters and bombers. These things can have a fatal impact on battleships. In war, if you want to control territorial waters, you must control airspace. Otherwise, they can just send a few planes to sink the battleships into the sea. This situation often happened in World War II. As soon as the battleships of some countries went out to sea, they sank in the blink of an eye as soon as the enemy planes arrived. Yes, the battleships of the current military powers have long been replaced by aircraft carrier battle groups. But this does not mean that they have no value. Admiral Sunny Bar, we have prepared some welcome ceremonies for the arrival of your navy. I wonder if you are willing to attend? Maweli asked everyone with a smile. Sure, but this welcome ceremony? Is it related to this battleship? Admiral Sunny Bar asked Maweli, as if he had thought of something. That's about right. Maweli nodded casually, then glanced at the factory director Mikhail standing not far away, and signaled to him, you can start. Mikhail received the order, then picked up the intercom in his hand, and conveyed Maweli's order to the dock control room. The chairman said you can start. The control room received the order and immediately activated the corresponding switch. Then half a minute later, the people above saw the gate on the sea side of the dock suddenly opened. Then the majestic seawater rushed in from the gate and soon filled the entire dock. With the influx of seawater, the battleship originally placed on the keel of the dock slowly floated up. Then it was led into the sea by the towing equipment in the dock. Then several tugboats that had been waiting outside completely towed the battleship out of the shipyard. This time the sea operation was completed. Okay, everyone, the welcome ceremony will start soon, and we should set off. Seeing that the battleship went out to sea smoothly, Maweli smiled and said to the naval officers. Then he led everyone to a 3,000-ton Talwar frigate and motioned for everyone to board. Admiral Sunibar was a little confused about the situation. He originally thought that Maweli would let them board the battleship just now to experience it. But unexpectedly, it was a frigate with a tonnage less than 10 times. The difference seemed a bit big, right? Mr. Maweli, didn't you say that this welcome ceremony was related to that battleship? Why did we board this Talwar class frigate? Sunibar asked Maweli in confusion. You will know when the time comes, Admiral Sunibar. Maweli kept it a secret. The Indian Navy's order must be one, because their needs are not just this batch. There will be many more to come. Not only the Navy, but also the Indian Army and the Indian Air Force will have to buy military equipment at that time, and the amount is no joke. After hearing what Maweli said, Admiral Sunibar had to put aside his doubts and boarded the Talwar class frigate in front of him with his officers. And on the deck of the warship, he met the captain and the deputy captain who had been waiting for a long time. Admiral Sunibar, let me introduce you. This is the captain of the frigate, Lieutenant Colonel Povkin. Maweli introduced the two parties to each other skillfully. It must be said that, since Maweli donated 26.5 million research and development funds to the Navy, the Russian Navy has had a good impression of him. This also allows him, a businessman, to travel freely with the army. It can be said that he is doing very well. After Admiral Sunibar and the captain and deputy captain got to know each other one by one, Maweli saw that the time was right, so he started his first round of deception, that is, talking about business. Admiral Sunibar, the Talwar class frigate you are on is equipped with 8 units of vertically launched MOS supersonic anti-ship missiles and a 3S-90 single-arm launcher that can launch Shikli medium-range ship-to-air missiles. The ship is fully fueled and has a maximum speed of 27 knots. Maweli knew that the Indian Navy in 2000 was still using steam turbines to propel ships. Such outdated warships could be put into history museums. So they urgently needed advanced ships to equip their military strength. After listening to Maweli's introduction, Admiral Sunibar finally stopped paying attention to the battleship just now. Instead, he asked Maweli with concern, "So Mr. Maweli, how much does your country sell a 3,000-ton Talwar frigate like this one for? How long is the delivery time? We hope it will be faster. The Indian Navy urgently needs equipment to improve its strength, and their requirement for delivery time is that the sooner the better. It is best to spend money now and have a ready-made one to drive back home tomorrow. Whether the price is expensive or not is secondary, as long as it does not exceed the budget. It is like this, Admiral Sunibar, the price of a Talwar class frigate is $180 million US. If your country has a large demand, we can apply for a discount. Chapter 107 Drones. As for the delivery cycle of warships, 3 can be delivered within the first year, and the remaining ones will be delivered in 4 years each. Maweli said to Admiral Sunibar in a calm voice. When he spoke, Maweli felt like he was dreaming. He didn't expect that in this life he would be so awesome that he could participate in the ship trade between the Russian Navy and the Indian Navy. Sure enough, the layout of buying the shipyard and funding the Navy was correct. $180 million US. 3 ships can be delivered within the first year. Sunibar seriously considered Maweli's words. Usually, the delivery cycle of frigates is about 4 to 5 years. Delivering 3 ships within the first year is indeed very tempting, especially for the current Indian Navy. It is simply a timely help. How many ships can I buy for a discount, and how much is the discount, Mr. Maweli? The delivery period of the North Sea shipyard made Admiral Sunibar a little tempted. Now what needs to be determined is the price. At least 6 ships. If the number is less than this, it will be difficult for us to apply for a discount. As for the discount, it is estimated to be around 10% at most. Mawei in this life is really capable. He started selling 6 frigates at 180 million yuan, without any ambiguity. But then again, whether it is selling warships or nuclear bombs, it is not much different from doing business. It's just that the items are different. After listening to the words, Admiral Sunibar thought for a while, and then said to Mawei, in this case, the budget will be close to $1 billion US. I'm afraid you have to give me some time to think about it, Mr. Mawei. Don't worry, I believe you will think it over, Admiral Sunibar. Mawei didn't think that he could sell the frigate right away. That's why he prepared this unique welcome ceremony. Then, he nodded to the captain and said, Lieutenant Colonel Povkin, please allow your fleet to set sail now. I think the battleship has sailed far enough. Okay, Mr. Mawei. After hearing this, Lieutenant Colonel Povkin immediately led everyone to the captain's room. Then he ordered all ships to set sail and chase the Soviet-class battleship that had been towed far away by the tugboat. Admiral Sunibar, who saw this scene, suddenly guessed what would happen next. So he turned to Mawei with a surprised and slightly surprised look and asked, Mr. Mawei, the naval welcome ceremony you just mentioned, could it be that this Talwar-class frigate will sink the battleship? Almost. Mawei shrugged and said, anyway, it doesn't cost much to refurbish a retired battleship. Selling tens of thousands more copies of the game will make it back. After hearing this, Admiral Sunibar immediately showed a look of astonishment. Before he came, he had never expected that the welcoming ceremony of the Russian Navy would actually be to sink a 55,000-ton Soviet battleship. How awesome and courageous must one be to dare to do this? Question mark? At least the Indian Navy does not have the strength to do this at present. Even if it is a military exercise, it dare not set such a standard. After hearing Mawei's answer, the group of Indian naval generals standing around the admiral could not help but whisper and talk to each other. Obviously, they were also surprised by the welcoming ceremony later. Are they going to sink that battleship? The Russian Navy is so tough. It really lives up to its reputation. Seeing the Indian Navy's discussions and their obviously amazed looks, the Russian Navy in the captain's room turned their eyes to Mawei. The idea of using a frigate to sink a battleship was proposed by Mawei. The purpose is to let the Indian Navy feel the strength of Russia's military power, thereby facilitating military transactions between the two countries. Mawei noticed the eyes of the Navy, so he shrugged his shoulders slightly, indicating that it was all a piece of cake. The next most important thing is the Talwar-class frigate. The scene of sinking the Soviet-class battleship must be magnificent and exciting. Only in this way can it be worthy of the explosion-proof cameras he arranged on the periphery. That's right, it would be a waste if such an awesome scene is not filmed. It will definitely be domineering and powerful when put into military documentaries or war movies in the future. When the Talwar-class frigate chased and approached the Soviet-class battleship in the distance, the group of Indian Navy in the captain's room showed expressions of expectation and concern. The tugboat responsible for transporting the battleship had already slipped away. The surrounding waters were also blocked by the Russian Navy, and no outsiders could enter. Captain Povkin, after driving the ship to a certain distance, ordered to stop moving forward, and then turned to look at Mawei. Although he was the person in charge of this operation, at best, he was just a lieutenant colonel. Therefore, it is still necessary to properly consult Mawei's opinion. After all, Mawei has the support of the colonel and the lieutenant general. If this deal goes wrong, it will be difficult for the lieutenant colonel to survive in the Russian Navy in the future. Maybe this is already his highest rank, and he can never go up again. Mawei was very fortunate that the captain sent to him was not the kind of arrogant and warlord captain. Otherwise, if there is a mistake in any link, then they, Russia, will lose these big Indian customers. He just nodded slightly, indicating to Lieutenant Colonel Povkin that it was time to start. Anyway, everything that should be approved has been approved by the superiors, and now it depends on whether his gun is good. Don't miss the sea, otherwise Mawei will really want to die. Seeing Mawei nod in confirmation, Captain Povkin was relieved and picked up the ship's walkie-talkie, asking the fleet to prepare for battle. Admiral Sunibar, why don't we take a look at the accuracy and power of this Shikali medium-range ship-to-air missile? Maweli said to the Admiral with a smile. The Shikali medium-range ship-to-air missile he mentioned was developed by the Russian Alta Scientific Research and Production Association in the 1980s and is numbered SAN-7 in the West. It is an all-weather, multi-channel shipborne medium-range air defense missile weapon system, and its main interception targets are bombers, fighter bombers, attack aircraft, helicopters and various anti-ship missiles. Just as Maweli was speaking, an unmanned aircraft, at an ultra-high flight speed of 1.1 Mach, soared in the sky 5,000 meters high. At the same time, a small red dot representing a drone appeared on the outer circle of the radar in the captain's room, and it approached the frigate at a speed visible to the naked eye. It means that the enemy aircraft has appeared and is attacking our fleet. Admiral Sunibar looked at the military radar and then looked at the small grey dot flying from the front. Chapter 108 Supersonic Cruise Missile. Then Admiral Sunibar pondered and asked Maweli, Mr. Maweli, how far can the maximum range of your Russian Navy Shilki medium-range ship-to-air missile be? Maweli smiled after hearing this, knowing that the other party was interested and wanted to buy it. Admiral Sunibar, the maximum range of our Shilki ship-to-air missile is 25 kilometers, the minimum range is 3.5 kilometers, and the maximum flight speed is 830 meters per second. The system can attack 6 targets at the same time, guide 12 missiles at the same time, and the interception height ranges from 15 meters to 15,000 meters. Maweli introduced Admiral Sunibar in detail. The Indian Navy was very focused when they heard it. At this time, they suddenly remembered that their country originally planned to develop the domestic Trishul ship-to-air missile. But in the end, not only did they invest money, but the missile was not developed. It was simply a loss of both the wife and the army, and the loss was unbearable. Mr. Maweli, I really want to see the power of your Shilki ship-to-air missile, Admiral Sunibar said to Maweli with anticipation. Maweli nodded after hearing this, then turned to look at Captain Povkin, who had already prepared, and signaled him that he could open fire. Now I give the order, open fire. As Lieutenant Colonel Povkin gave the order, the Shilki ship-to-air missile installed at the rear of the ship suddenly ignited a blazing flame on the single-arm launcher. Then, a large amount of heat energy and white smoke was ejected from the tail of the missile. Almost at the same time, the ship-to-air missile suddenly rushed into the sky at lightning speed and drew a trajectory composed of white smoke in the air. The whistling sound of the missile resounded in the sky, and its target was the unmanned aircraft that was also attacking at a very fast speed. From the moment the missile was launched, a small green dot suddenly appeared on the military radar in the captain's room, representing the ship-to-air missile that had just been launched. The green dot on the radar and the red dot coming from the front are in the same straight line, and the two are heading towards each other. At this speed, it is estimated that they will meet in the next 5 seconds. Hit countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. As the deputy captain counted down 5 seconds, the ship-to-air missile that was fired hit the unmanned aircraft at an altitude of 5,000 meters with incomparable accuracy, and a large-scale flame exploded in the sky. It's just that, because the distance is too far, everyone can't see too many details. But this does not affect the Indian Navy's understanding and admiration of the accuracy of the Shilki ship-to-air missile. The ship-to-air strike just now was really perfect. Mr. Maweli, Admiral Sunibar couldn't help but applaud. If his fleet can be equipped with this kind of ship-to-air missile of the Russian Navy, it will be completely upgraded, and its strength will be greatly increased. Thank you, Admiral Sunibar. These are all the credit of Captain Povkin. Maweli will not take credit for himself and steal the credit of others, especially in the military. He was very careful about this. Well, your Russian Shilki ship-to-air missile is very good. What other weapons are there on the ship? Maybe we can take a look. Admiral Sunibar asked Maweli with interest. Yes, no problem. Maweli said, nodded to Captain Povkin, and signaled that his fleet could start the most important task. That is to launch the MOS supersonic anti-ship cruise missile. Destroy the Soviet-class battleship parked in the distance. The MOS supersonic anti-ship cruise missile was developed based on the Russian GEM SSN-26 anti-ship missile. In the parallel world, it was not jointly developed with India. The missile has the performance characteristics of supersonic and multi-trajectory. Its penetration capability, anti-interference capability and anti-missile interception capability are unique in the world. The missile is 8.1 meters long, 0.67 meters in diameter, with a range of 50 to 350 kilometers, a cruising altitude of 14,000 to 15,000 meters, a flight speed of 2.5-2.8 Mach, a terminal ballistic altitude of 10 to 15 meters, and a launch weight of 3,000 kilograms. Admiral Sunibar, I solemnly recommend to you this Russian-developed MOS supersonic anti-ship cruise missile. Perhaps you can see its power yourself. While Maweli was introducing it to the Indian Navy, Captain Povkin, who was standing next to him, had already picked up the intercom, ready to launch the supersonic cruise missile on the ship at any time. Admiral Sunibar listened carefully to Maweli's introduction. He had just seen the power of the Shlicky Ship 2 air missile. Now, of course, he paid more attention to the cruise missile that Maweli mentioned and was looking forward to what kind of damage it would cause to the battleship. Okay, Mr. Maweli, let me see its power, Admiral Sunibar said, and turned to look at the Soviet-class battleship in the distance. At the same time, Captain Povkin also gave orders to the soldiers on the other side. Ignite. As soon as the captain's voice fell, a long grey missile suddenly rose vertically from the front deck of the frigate. The missile was 8 meters long and more than half a meter wide. The huge flames ejected from the tail were several times more fierce than the Ship 2 air missile just now. The group of Indian Navy officers in the captain's room looked at the cruise missile in surprise, rising slowly. Then, at supersonic speed, it broke through the air and flew towards the battleship in the distance. A huge white smoke instantly submerged the deck of the frigate. The whistling sound of the missile enveloped the warship. The group of Indian naval officers looked up at the cruise missile soaring in the sky, and the surprise and envy in their eyes were all seen by Maweli. From the ignition of the missile to its flight, it was completed almost in the blink of an eye. This scene can only be captured clearly in every detail if it is shot with a high-speed camera. The supersonic cruise missile soaring in the sky drew a perfect arc in the air. Then when it was about to fly over the battleship, it suddenly began to accelerate and fall. It rushed straight towards the Soviet-class battleship on the sea. It was said that it was too late, and before everyone could blink, the supersonic cruise missile that accelerated down hit the battleship deck without bias. Suddenly, the horrible explosion engulfed the entire deck in an instant. The fierce high-temperature flames, with the huge sparks produced by the explosion, raged on the battleship like a volcanic eruption. The high explosive airflow generated by the explosion bombarded the deck at a limit speed of 10,000 meters per second. The huge and heavy Soviet-class battleship couldn't help but shake violently. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 109 International Orders. Thick black smoke, carrying shrapnel and ship wreckage, flew in the air. The scene was shocking, as if witnessing the end of the world. Almost 3 seconds after the explosion, the rumbling sound of the explosion reached the ears of Maweli and others. Boom. As the eardrum shaking sound came, Maweli and others could clearly see that a sea shock wave with the battleship as the center was spreading on the sea surface at a speed visible to the naked eye, rolling up a circle of white waves. The picture looks beautiful, but it is extremely dangerous. Almost all marine life within the range of the shock wave was stunned by the shock wave. In particular, some fish that were too close were shocked to the point that their internal organs ruptured and their bellies turned over. The supersonic cruise missile almost blew up the entire front deck of the battleship. The surging seawater continued to pour in from the crack. Soon, the front end of the entire battleship slowly sank due to severe water inflow. After about 5 minutes, half of the Soviet-class battleship was already immersed in the seawater. Due to the angle of sinking, the tail of the battleship was 90 degrees vertical to the sea surface. The scene was the same as when the movie Titanic sank. The only difference was that a huge vortex formed around the battleship. This vortex continuously rolled the dead fish and shrimps around to the bottom of the sea. The Indian Navy, standing in the captain's room watching the scene, was completely shocked by the supersonic cruise missiles of the Russian Navy. The 55,000-ton sea behemoth sank to the bottom of the sea in an instant. That scene, to be honest, was the first time the Indian Navy had seen it. How is it, Admiral Sunny Bar? Are you satisfied with the welcome ceremony of our Russian Navy? Mavey also saw such a scene for the first time. The scene just now was not fully recorded even in the documentary. The shock brought by seeing it with one's own eyes is absolutely indescribable. I'm very satisfied. Mr. Mavey, by the way, you just said that if you order 6 frigates at a time, you can apply for a 10% discount, and the delivery period of the first 3 is within the first year. After experiencing the power of cruise missiles, Admiral Sunny Bar has made a decision in his heart. That is, the 3,000-ton Talwar frigate must be bought by his Indian Navy. If these 6 warships are brought back to the country, it will definitely greatly enhance the strength of the Indian Navy and deter neighboring countries from taking their ideas in their waters. Yes, Admiral Sunny Bar. But there is one thing I want to explain to you in advance. According to his previous life memory, Mavey knew the needs of the Indian Navy. He also knew that they did reach a deal with Russia in the end. So he took the 3,000-ton heir and 3 border patrol ships with horizontal and full fuel propulsion in the 1980s in the hands of the Russian Navy and modified them with 8 units of vertically launched MOS supersonic anti-ship missiles. Then a 3 S-90 single-arm launcher that can launch the Shikari medium-range ship-to-air missile was installed. In this way, the Heir class was instantly upgraded to the Talwar class, and the original 4-year delivery time was shortened to 1 year. As for the remaining 3 warships, they were completed according to the construction plan with an efficiency of 1 ship in 4 years. After listening to Mavey's explanation, Admiral Sunny Bar accepted his proposal after thinking about it. After all, the Indian Navy can't wait for 24 years at present. Even for 4 years, they can't wait. Their fleet warships are still propelled by steam turbines. Besides, it is generally difficult to buy the most advanced military weapons. This is international common sense. Mr. Mavey, thank you very much for your reception. By the way, can your shipyard build aircraft carriers or nuclear-powered submarines? I think in a few years, our Indian Navy may have this demand. Admiral Sunny Bar asked Mavey seriously. Obviously, he also wants to cooperate with Russia for India's future business. Don't worry, Admiral Sunny Bar, there will be aircraft carriers and nuclear-powered submarines. Mavey said without giving a direct answer. His North Sea shipyard is not yet capable of building aircraft carriers. But there is nothing to be ashamed of, because almost all Russian shipyards no longer have the ability to build aircraft carriers. The only one that has the ability is the Black Sea Nikolaev shipyard that was assigned to Ukraine when the Soviet Union collapsed. The first aircraft carrier in China, the Liaoning aircraft carrier, was built in this shipyard. After receiving Admiral Sunny Bar from India, Mavey also prepared to pack up and go home. After 3 weeks of consideration and discussion, the Indian Navy finally decided to purchase 6 3,000-ton Talwar stealth frigates from the Russian Navy. The total payment amount is $972 million. The Indian Navy cannot take out this money all at once. They borrowed money from the Russian government to purchase these 6 warships, then pay off the principal and interest within 10 years. Whether to take out a loan or not has little to do with Mavey's North Sea shipyard. Anyway, according to the contract, both parties will pay 50% as a deposit, which is $486 million. The rest will be paid in the middle and final stages of construction. The cost of one of the 6 3,000-ton Talwar stealth frigates is only $12.8 million. This international order directly made the shipyard a net profit of $900 million. Of course, Mavey can't take the $900 million profit alone. After all, the Russian Navy is also involved. The military also has its own shipyard, and some orders must be diverted to it. But even so, Mavey's North Sea shipyard has made a lot of money. Counting the ship modification orders of the Little White Hats and the Grisha-class frigate orders of the Northern Fleet, Mavey's shipyard is almost too busy. Even if the number of workers has exceeded 8,500, it feels that there are not enough people. In a mansion in the center of Russia, the butler Ivan knocked on Mawey's door and asked him, "Master, the order volume at the Bihai shipyard is almost saturated. Do you think we should contact a few more shipyards to discuss the acquisition?" "Sure, go and contact them. Don't limit yourself to Russia. You can also send people to contact neighboring countries, such as Ukraine." According to his memories of his previous life, Mawey knew that at this time in 2000, not only the Indian Navy needed to buy warships, Malaysia and the Chinese Navy also had this demand. They even had the demand to buy aircraft carriers, and the amount would be even greater. It's just that in this parallel world of this life, for some reason, Asian countries seem to have no movement. Chapter 110 Ukrainian Black Sea Shipyard. This also means that the Black Sea Shipyard, which was originally able to get aircraft carrier orders, has not done much in this life. It can only produce some cargo ships and fishing boats to make a living. 5 days later, the butler Ivan brought back a very important news. That is, "Master, we inquired about the news in Ukraine and heard that their largest shipyard, the Black Sea Shipyard, has been in such a difficult situation that it can't even pay wages some time ago, and many talents have been lost. Now it depends on the country to continue to make up for the losses in order to maintain operations. If it continues like this, it is estimated that the shipyard will soon file for bankruptcy." Mawey listened carefully to the butler's words while stroking the little tiger's head lying on his lap. He remembered that in his previous life, the Black Sea Shipyard filed for bankruptcy in 2018. Unexpectedly, in this life, after losing orders from Asian countries, it would be so soon. How much does it cost to acquire this Black Sea Shipyard in Ukraine? Has the team estimated the price? Mawey asked the butler. In 2000, the relationship between Russia and Ukraine was still very good, and it could be said that they were like brothers. If Mawey wants to spend money to acquire some shares of the Black Sea Shipyard, I believe it should not be difficult. Moreover, the Ukrainian government really has no money to operate the shipyard. Instead of letting it rot in its own hands, it is better to cooperate with him. In this way, not only can it be sold at a good price, but Ukraine will also be indispensable in the subsequent turnaround. It is simply a one-time solution. Of course, as for the relationship between Ukraine and Russia in the future, it depends on subsequent developments. I believe that in this life, with the rebirth of Mawey, he will not be willing to see the two brothers who are as close as brothers turn against each other. "Master, the team's valuation of the Black Sea Shipyard is about $190 million US. If we wait another 1 or 2 years until the shipyard files for bankruptcy and the court liquidates, the price should be cheaper. About $150 million US. The butler said to Mawey very responsibly. But after hearing this, Mawey shook his head. There are too many variables in 2 years. If India, Malaysia and other countries order aircraft carriers or destroyers from the shipyard, the Black Sea Shipyard will be able to come back to life immediately. Don't lose such a good opportunity for $40 million US. And Ukraine may not transfer all the shipyards in the end. As long as they are willing to cooperate with me, that's enough. Mawey knows the truth. It is difficult for him to buy all of Ukraine's largest military shipyards, like he did with other companies. Only cooperation between the two sides is the most reasonable, and he doesn't want to disrupt his shipping industry layout in order to save tens of millions of dollars. After all, the Indian Navy has made it clear that they will really order aircraft carriers in the future. If this order is given to Ukraine, Mawey will have to wait another 18 years. This is not fun. But when it comes to aircraft carriers, there is a lot of knowledge in it. There are two types of aircraft carriers. One is the modern class conventional powered aircraft carrier, and the other is the nuclear powered aircraft carrier. The cost of a modern class conventional powered aircraft carrier with a 60,000 ton hull is generally $400 million US, and the external selling price is about $3.6 billion US. As for a nuclear powered aircraft carrier, the cost is at least 60% more expensive, which is $640 million US. The external selling price is at least $5.5 billion US. This is the price in 2000. After the aircraft carrier is built, the carrier-based aircraft on it must also be configured. The first domestic aircraft carrier, the Lion aircraft carrier, can carry 36 aircraft. These include 4 Z-18 JAWS early warning helicopters, 6 Z-18F anti-submarine helicopters, 2 Z-9C search and rescue helicopters and 24 JAL-15 fighters. These carrier-based aircraft, calculated according to the price of the same level, are priced at least $2 billion. So in total, a conventional powered aircraft carrier alone can be sold for more than $5.3 billion. The profit here is much greater than that of making frigates and destroyers. Of course, the prerequisite is to get an aircraft carrier order. Okay, master, I got it. I'll send someone to contact them right away. Butler Ivan unconditionally supports his master's decision. After all, he has watched Maweli succeed all the way. Whether it is the internet, movies, games, or even the current military industry, Maweli has hardly made any mistakes. Yeah. Maweli said, reaching out to pick up Winnie the polar bear lying at his feet from the floor with difficulty. After more than 6 months of growth, Winnie the bear has become very heavy. But she is still milky and sticks to Maweli all day long for a hug. 3 days later, Maweli took his Gulfstream G200 aircraft and took off from Moscow airport and flew directly to Boryspil airport in Kyiv, Ukraine. At present, he has successfully accumulated a bank deposit of $590 million through the game Counter-Strike and the order of 6 frigates. With this huge amount of money, Maweli is considering rewarding himself as an encouragement after acquiring the Black Sea shipyard. For example, replace the G200 business jet that I have been riding for a long time. Get an A380 Airbus and a Bombardier Global Express. This is the aircraft Bill Gates bought. The A380 will be used for important travel occasions, such as negotiating a nuclear warhead deal with the UAE in the future. For example, negotiating a nuclear-powered submarine with Malaysia. As for the Bombardier Global Express, keep a low profile and just fly it on weekdays. While buying the aircraft, of course, I have to go see the goddess Jennifer, who I haven't seen for many days. With the current relationship between the two, it's time to take a step further. Enjoy life to the fullest. I have to say that Maweli is a little bit arrogant now, but he still has the necessary calmness. Otherwise any wrong decision can make him irreparable. When the plane landed smoothly at the Ukrainian airport, Maweli took a motorcade to visit the Black Sea shipyard. The Black Sea shipyard, covering an area of 2 million square meters, was the only aircraft carrier construction and assembly plant in the Soviet era. It has produced aircraft carriers including the Moscow, Leningrad, Kyiv, Minsk, Kuznetsov and so on. It can be said to be the largest and most powerful military shipyard in Europe. Maweli sat in his shield bulletproof car, looking at the outline of the shipyard in the distance. Compared with the North Sea shipyard he bought at the beginning, this shipyard is 5 times larger. It is conceivable that, if there is no order, it will cost more money every day. Even if the Ukrainian government intends to support it, it is estimated that it will be difficult to reverse its decline. When Maweli's convoy drove all the way to the gate of the Black Sea shipyard, the Ukrainian government officials and Ukrainian naval generals who had already learned the news took the initiative to come out to greet Maweli's arrival. Chapter 111 Varyak Aircraft Carrier. Hello, Mr. Maweli. Welcome to our Black Sea shipyard. The person who was responsible for receiving Maweli was a female officer with brown hair, wearing a female Ukrainian Navy cap and a dark Ukrainian Navy uniform. Her rank was major. Maweli took a look at her and found that the woman was very young and beautiful. She was definitely under 30 years old. At such an age, she could reach the height of major, which shows that her family background is very deep. For ordinary people, if they can become majors before the age of 35, they will have a bright future. Not to mention before the age of 30. Hello. Maweli greeted the other party calmly. She knew that the woman must have some background. Otherwise, the military would not have sent a major to represent them to negotiate the transfer of the largest shipyard in Ukraine. At least he must be a colonel or a major general. Hello, you haven't asked me my name yet, Mr. Maweli, the female officer said, smiling at Maweli. If he hadn't seen so many Ukrainian Navy officers standing behind her with serious expressions, Maweli would really think that the other party was actually a beautiful actress playing an officer in front of him. That smile coupled with the navy uniform she was wearing, was absolutely lethal and seductive. "What's your name?" Mavey asked casually. "Shekiniya Petrovich." The woman stretched out her bare hand and gently shook hands with Mavey. "Petrovich?" Mavey thought about the name carefully. If he remembered correctly, Petrovich was the admiral of the Ukrainian Navy, second only to the naval marshal in power. No wonder this woman named Shekiniya became a major at a young age. It turned out that she had a very awesome father. "Hello, Major Shekiniya. Well, get in the car. I'll take you to visit our Black Sea shipyard." Major Shekiniya motioned to Mavey to get in her jeep. Then, unexpectedly, she didn't wait for anyone and drove Mavey away directly. This scene made the bodyguards behind Mavey and the Ukrainian officials standing in front of him look at each other in bewilderment. They didn't expect that such a scene would happen in such a serious scene. They hadn't even shaken hands with Mavey yet. Mavey, who was sitting in the jeep, looked at Shekiniya curiously in the driver's seat. "I didn't expect to meet such an interesting person when I came to Ukraine this time. I just don't know where she is going to take me." The military jeep drove in the shipyard for about 10 minutes, and Shekiniya drove Mavey to a giant dry dock. "Mr. Mavey, this is our Black Sea shipyard, the Varyak aircraft carrier, which has been completed by nearly 67%. Since 1991, it has been forced to stop construction due to the interruption of construction funds. The same is true for the Ulyanovsk nuclear-powered aircraft carrier in another place. It has been stopped until now, less than 2 years after it started," Shekiniya said, then opened the car door and walked out first. Judging from the expression on her face, she was less graceful and more solemn. She was obviously very worried about the current shipbuilding industry in Ukraine. Mavey sat in the car, looking at the half-finished Varyak aircraft carrier in front of him. The behemoth in front of him was the predecessor of the Lion aircraft carrier. However, in this life, it was still lying in the Black Sea dock, waiting to be redeemed. Before Mavey could speak, Shekiniya, who was walking in front, suddenly said to Mavey, "Mr. Mavey, I know you are determined to get our Black Sea shipyard in Ukraine. So why not just make an offer?" Shekiniya's gentle voice echoed in the empty dock. She did not turn around when she spoke, but just looked at the Varyak quietly. As for Mavey, she had sent people to find out about him a long time ago, and knew that he was the behind-the-scenes boss of the North Sea shipyard, and had recently traded ships with India. In terms of his management ability, I believe that the Black Sea shipyard should be able to reverse some of its decline in his hands. The Ukrainian Navy was reluctant to give up their flagship shipyard. Unfortunately, the domestic economy was deteriorating, and they could no longer afford this giant shipyard of 2 million square meters. Instead of watching it deteriorate day by day, it would be better to find a business partner to cooperate with. This would not only drive economic growth, but also reduce the domestic unemployment rate. More importantly, the Ukrainian Navy could maintain their shipbuilding strength. Otherwise, if the shipyard went bankrupt, it would be a fatal blow to their navy. Ask a price. Mavey seemed to have guessed what the other party meant, so he did not say his offer. Instead, he asked, "Major Shekiniya, are you, the Ukrainian Navy, willing to sell shares of the Black Sea shipyard?" "That depends on how much you are willing to pay, Mr. Mavey," Shekiniya said, turning around, and then looked at Mavey with a smile. The meaning in her eyes was hard to understand. Mavey knew that it was definitely unrealistic to fully control the Blackwater shipyard. The other party just wanted to get his price so that he could have a bottom line in his heart. So Mavey said directly to Major Shekiniya, $100 million. This is my offer. As the voice gradually fell, Shekiniya, who was standing in front of him, suddenly put away her smile and replied to Mavey, $100 million. Impossible, Mr. Mavey. You seem to be taking it too lightly, right? The price of $100 million is too light. Then selling all shares of the Black Sea shipyard is not likely, right? Major Shekiniya, Mavey asked back tit for tat. Now he has at least met the Russian Navy Vice Admiral and the Indian Navy Admiral. So a mere beautiful Major General really can't scare him. After hearing Mavey's question, Major Shekiniya was silent and had nothing to say. Originally, he wanted to catch Mavey's braid and give him a warning. But who knew that in the end, it would be himself. Mr. Mawey, if that's the case, then I won't beat around the bush. We are all clear-headed people. The $100 million you offered just now can only buy half of the shares of our Black Sea shipyard at most. Major Sheknir said to Mawey tentatively. Selling shares is a small matter, but saving the Black Sea shipyard is a big matter. The Ukrainians understand this very well, so they won't make things too difficult for their partners, so as not to scare them away. $100 million can only buy nearly half of the shares? Mawey asked again. Yes. So, do you think the price is too high, Mr. Mawey? Seeing Mawey's thoughtful look, Sheknir was a little worried that their Ukrainian offer would exceed Mawey's psychological expectations. That would be troublesome at that time. Unless Mawey raised his psychological price or they lowered their offer, the cooperation might end before it even started. Chapter 112 Bombardier Global Express. However, just when Major Sheknir was worrying about this, Mawey, who was standing in front of her, suddenly said to her lightly, I think the price is very reasonable, Major Sheknir, let's say $100 million. As soon as the simple and clear voice fell, Major Sheknir in front of her was stunned for a moment and didn't react. It was not until half a second later that she suddenly realized that Mawey's questions and expressions were all intentional. In fact, he had already thought about it and bought 50% of the shares of the Black Sea shipyard from the Ukrainian Navy at a price of $100 million. It's just that Major Sheknir couldn't make the decision on this matter. At most, he just helped to convey it or revealed some useful information from it to facilitate the transaction. Okay, Mr. Mawey, I think we already know your offer. Our Ukrainian Navy will seriously consider it. After being stunned, Major Sheknir said to Mawey in a business-like manner. Well, then I'll wait for your good news. Just like the last time he acquired the North Sea shipyard, Mawey didn't need to find ways to pay money to buy the shipyard. Anyway, just quote a price and let the other party consider it. When Mawey left the Black Sea shipyard and flew to the United States, Major Sheknir also conveyed Mawey's offer of $100 million to her father, Admiral Petrovic. Father, the Russians are willing to pay $100 million to acquire 50% of the shares of our Black Sea shipyard. This is not much different from our previous estimate. How long do you think it will take to give him an answer? Sheknir asked her father on the phone. Put it aside for now and wait for 2 weeks before applying. The Ukrainian Navy also wants to put on heirs, although they really want Mawey to save their shipyard. But everyone knows the face of a soldier. At the same time, under the blue sky of the Pacific Ocean, Mawey sat comfortably in his seat, enjoying the gentle service of the stewardess. His intuition told him that the Black Sea shipyard was almost acquired. Now it's nothing more than waiting for a clear answer from the other party. I just hope that during this period, nothing will happen. For example, if a certain country suddenly wants to buy destroyers and aircraft carriers, then the cook duck will fly away. Mawey is still counting on him to acquire the shares of the Black Sea shipyard and then help Russia build 2 aircraft carriers for fun. After all, the modern Russian Navy has never built a new nuclear-powered aircraft carrier, let alone a conventional powered aircraft carrier. They are all living off their old capital. I believe that, when the time comes, Putin will definitely find him and talk about the development project of the Russian aircraft carrier battle group. In addition to aircraft carriers, Ukraine also has a large number of nuclear warheads and bombers stranded in military warehouses. In the previous life, NATO gave Ukraine a sum of money to destroy these weapons, and Ukraine did so because of economic difficulties. I believe that in this life, Mawey will definitely see this business opportunity. On the plane, after a short nap, Mawey opened his eyes and woke up and found that he was already in the airspace of the United States. The plane will soon land at Washington Airport. Since the last time they parted at Disneyland, Mawey has not seen the goddess Jennifer for a long time. So today, he prepared a gift for Jennifer and himself. That is the Bombardier Global Express XRS. Yes, it is a super luxury business jet that even Bill Gates loves. I remember that in an interview, Bill Gates described buying an airplane as a guilty pleasure. The reason is that, although owning a private jet is very cool, it is extravagant to the point of sin. The cost of maintaining the aircraft for a year can buy 2 or 3 sports cars. When Maweli's private plane landed at the Washington airport, Maweli saw it and drove the Aston Martin DB7 to greet his goddess Jennifer. Today, Jennifer wore popular slim jeans and a white chiffon shirt, which outlined her charming and perfect figure. The large and fashionable sunglasses set off her beautiful face like a female star. Especially when the goddess opened the door and walked out of the Aston Martin. It was just like a picture, making people reluctant to look away. "What are you looking at?" Jennifer came to Maweli in a leisurely manner. Jennifer loves and hates this unfaithful man who hasn't dated her for a long time, but she can't do anything about him. "Look, I haven't seen you for more than a month. Have you gained weight?" Maweli said to the goddess with a smile. This first sentence, when they met, made Jennifer angry. "Did you gain weight?" Jennifer bit her teeth and squeezed out this sentence from her teeth. "It seems not, but I seem to be in better shape." Maweli's desire to survive can be said to be very strong. This pair of enemies often pinch each other when chatting in text messages. "Huh, you are good at talking." Jennifer calmed down immediately. The mood changed faster than the weather. "Of course, in addition to being able to talk, I also have a gift for you," Maweli said, motioning Jennifer to get in the Aston Martin she drove and take her to a place. "Gift? What gift?" Jennifer was a little curious. As the daughter of a consortium, she had never lacked gifts since she was a child. Almost everything she wanted was available. "You'll know when you get there." Maweli got into Jennifer's Aston Martin and drove her away from the airport. Maweli didn't have an air transport fleet this time when he came to the United States. The reason was that he came here to do something and then leave, and he wouldn't stay for a long time. Maweli drove the sports car all the way and took Jennifer to a place called Bombardier Washington Branch. There are many modern large warehouses here, as well as runways for airplanes to take off and land. "Bombardier? You're not going to buy a private jet, are you?" Jennifer was really a little surprised. She knew the brand of Bombardier, which was comparable to Gulfstream Aerospace, including her father, who had been talking all day long a while ago that he wanted to spend money to replace the Gulfstream V business jet with the Bombardier Global Express XRS. But because of the price issue, he reluctantly gave up. After all, the Gulfstream V had only been bought for a few years, and it was a bit reluctant to change it so soon. The Global Express XRS has a spacious, private, luxurious, and comfortable cabin space, which can accommodate 8 to 19 passengers. It is the most spacious business jet of the same level. This flagship model of Bombardier can reach a maximum cruising altitude of 15,545 meters. At this altitude, there is very little airflow, so it is very comfortable. Its maximum cruising speed is 0.89 Mach, and its maximum cruising distance is more than 10,000 kilometers. "Yes, why not buy it?" Maweli said, blinking at the goddess. Now he has money in his pocket. There will be 4 more chapters today. One more chapter is a bonus from book friend King 861,006. Don't worry, everyone! Exclamation mark. Chapter 113 A380 and Global Express XRS. A total of $590 million US. Even if 100 million is spent on purchasing a shipyard and 50 million is spent on building luxury houses and shopping malls, Maweli still has about 450 million in his bank account. When several frigates from India are delivered, there will be several hundred million more in his account. If he doesn't spend some of this and doesn't reward himself, what's the difference between living and being a miser? After listening to what Maweli said, even Jennifer, the daughter of Marriott Group, felt that he was going to heaven. Giving her a Bombardier Global Express as a gift is too expensive. This gift is too expensive, Maweli, I can't take it. Jennifer refused firmly. If it is an ordinary gift, then both parties can send it to each other. There is no problem at all. She can afford the money. But a Bombardier private jet, Jennifer can't afford it. Really? Maweli couldn't help but repeat. Yeah. Jennifer nodded after hearing it. Maweli looked at the goddess' serious refusal expression and then drove the car into the Bombardier branch without saying anything. If it were other gold diggers and green tea bitches, they would have readily agreed to it after hearing someone say they would give them a private jet. Unlike Jennifer, she refused so firmly, not pretending. If you don't want it, then I have to give this gift to myself. Maweli stopped the sports car helplessly and unbuckled the seatbelt. Since the goddess thought the gift was too expensive, there was no reason for him to force it. Yeah. Jennifer actively cooperated with Maweli. She knew that Maweli had this intention, so she was satisfied. But if she went home and told her father about this, I'm afraid that the chairman of Marriott Group would be angry with himself for giving birth to such a silly daughter. Why don't you want the gift from the man? Buying a private jet usually requires an appointment in advance. Of course, there are also customers who come directly to buy, such as Maweli. When he took Jennifer into the lobby of the Bombardier branch, a pretty saleswoman in a skirt came forward to greet him. Welcome to Bombardier Aerospace. Do you have an appointment? No, we came to take a look. Maweli was too lazy to ask the butler to make an appointment. Anyway, he would leave after buying. Well, if you don't have an appointment, then please follow me, sir. I will introduce our Bombardier models to you, and you can learn about them. The saleswoman said to Maweli and Jennifer in a gentle manner. Even if Maweli was dressed in ordinary clothes and had nothing on her body that cost more than 1,000 yuan, she would not dare to look at people through the crack of the door, as she would look down on people. After all, anyone who dared to walk into their Bombardier had more or less confidence. Don't look at these people's ordinary clothes. When they spend money one by one, they might scare people's eyes off. No need to learn about it first. Let's get a Bombardier Global Express XRS. And how long will it take to deliver it? What are the options for interior customization? Maweli said directly to the saleswoman. If it weren't for the fact that he had to sign in person to buy the plane and swipe the bank card, he really wanted to ask his men to buy it. As soon as the light words were spoken, the Bombardier salesman standing in front of him was stunned and opened his eyes wide. Ah, what, sir? You mean, just buy it directly? Even though he had a strong psychological quality and was used to seeing rich people, the Bombardier salesman had never seen anyone buy a top private jet, like buying cabbage, so casually. And the key is that the other party didn't even ask the price. Obviously, buying a Bombardier plane is nothing to him. Sir, then, I will handle the contract for you directly. The delivery time of the private jet is about 9 months. For the decoration of the aircraft interior, sir, we have 6 options here for you to choose. The female salesman said to Maweli conscientiously. Well, Maweli nodded casually, and then, under the reception of the female salesman, he chose his favorite decoration style and luxurious interior. Then he asked the butler who arrived later to take out the bank card to pay. Sir, the total order amount is 17.5 million US dollars. According to the terms of the contract, 50% must be paid as a deposit first, which is 8.75 million US dollars. The saleswoman said softly to Maweli, holding the written contract. Maweli simply glanced at the document and signed his name directly. Seeing this, Jennifer, who was sitting next to him, looked at Maweli with a very strange look from time to time. Why are you always looking at me? Is there something dirty on my face? Maweli naturally noticed the goddess's strangeness. No, it's just that my dad is reluctant to buy this Bombardier Global Express XRS. If I tell him about this, I don't know how he will react. Although Jennifer didn't know how Maweli suddenly became so rich, he could change a 17.5 million private jet just by saying so. But thinking of her father's entanglement, she thought that telling her father about Maweli's purchase of a plane would be very interesting. Who told him that he was lukewarm to Maweli at the beginning, which made people feel uncomfortable. Maweli looked at Jennifer's mischievous look and couldn't help but smiled and said to her, "Why are you so mean?" When the goddess heard that Maweli seemed to dislike her, she immediately bared her teeth and claws at Maweli like a little cat whose tail was stepped on. How am I mean? I'm very kind. Okay. So you don't like it? Did I say I don't like it? Well, if you must say it, tell your dad by the way, that in addition to the Bombardier Global Express, there is also an A380 to buy. Maweli said, shrugging his shoulders helplessly, meaning that if you want to be mean, everyone should be mean together. Anyway, your dad is the one who gets hurt. As soon as the voice fell, Jennifer, who was sitting next to him, and the Bombardier sales who was quietly listening to the conversation between the two, were stunned for a moment. To be precise, they were scared by Maweli. Ah, no way. You still want to buy an A380? Mawei's rich behavior really surprised Jennifer. If she remembered correctly, an A380 passenger plane would cost more than 80 million US dollars. It was equivalent to 5 Bombardier Global Expresses. Yes, I'll buy it later. Mawei answered very easily. 80 million US dollars is really nothing for him now. I just hope that Jennifer's father will not be too surprised after hearing this news. The Bombardier salesperson, who had been frightened by Mawei, now had no idea in his mind. She originally thought that she was very lucky today and met a rich customer who came up to buy. But who knew that this rich man just bought the Bombardier for the sake of convenience. After buying it, he also wanted to buy an A380. It's so rich. Chapter 114. Who needs an aircraft carrier? After ordering both planes, Jennifer sent a text message to her father. Dad, the boy you met at the party last time, he bought a Bombardier Global Express XRS today, and an Airbus A380. Jennifer sent these two text messages separately. The meaning is self-evident, that is, she wanted to see how her father, who was lukewarm to Mawei at the beginning, would react after seeing him flying to success. So, not long after the two messages were sent, Jennifer's father immediately called. What's the matter with those two text messages just now? Is it true? For Mawei, buying an airplane for 100 million US dollars at any time. Even the chairman of Marriott Group was shocked. What's more, this young man was the one he met at the party. I didn't expect that after not seeing him for a few months, he would suddenly become so capable. How long has it been? Question mark? It's true, I'm right next to it. Jennifer did this to prove Mawei to her father. Otherwise, she wouldn't have the time to send a text message. After Jennifer finished speaking, the CEO father on the other end of the phone was silent for a long time. 100 million US dollars, that's nearly 10% of his net worth. He spent it without any pressure. It seems that I have to reevaluate this young man, Mawei. After talking to her father on the phone, Jennifer was as happy as a little sparrow. She was smart and knew that her father's impression of Mawei must have changed. After all, that was the Bombardier Global and the A380. Even the world's top rich people rarely bought them in a package. What are you doing? So happy. Mawei really had no idea about Jennifer. There was a private jet for her, but she didn't want it. At this moment, she was still happy like a 4-year-old child. But it was precisely because of this that Jennifer's preciousness was reflected. I didn't do anything. Isn't it good to be happy? Do you want me to be sulking all day? Jennifer was in a good mood today and didn't argue with Mawei. Even when she was sulking, she was smiling. Of course not, it's just. Mawei hesitated. Jennifer refused to accept his plea, and he didn't know what gift to give as a substitute. Just what? Jennifer asked in confusion. It's just that I thought of what gift to give you. This gift is very memorable, Mawei said with a smile, and it is estimated that Jennifer will not refuse this time. What kind of memorable gift is it? Tell me. Jennifer stretched out her bare hand and hooked her finger at Mawei. I bought 2 plots of land in Shangyuan some time ago, and I will find a design company to plan it in 2 days. So the design style is based on your preferences. When you become an old woman in the future, you can proudly say to your descendants. Mawei hadn't finished speaking yet. He saw the goddess punch him in the chest. Puff. The punch almost made someone spit out blood. Originally, when Mawei said the first half of the sentence, the goddess was still very happy and pleased. But after hearing the second half of the sentence, especially the 5 words become an old woman, I was so angry that my teeth itched. I wanted to pounce on Mawei and bite him. This gift seems to be very good. I accepted. Jennifer used her fingertips to touch Mawei's chest. For this commemorative gift, she was still happy to accept it. Except for the second half of the sentence. The gift is good. Why hit me? I haven't finished talking yet. Mawei said with a bit of chest tightness. Don't say it. I know it's definitely not a good thing. Jennifer knew Mawei very well. Indeed, Mawei's last sentence was, when you become an old woman in the future, you can proudly say to your children and grandchildren that I want to let the whole world know that these 2 plots of land were contracted by your grandmother. Mawei, who failed to throw the joke, shrugged his shoulders with a lack of interest and then took Jennifer to find several design companies and let her choose the design she liked. 3 days later, after the goddess's entanglement, the two finally chose American Bechtel Engineering Company as their partner. The design fee for the luxury riverside mansions and the fashionable shopping mall was $7.5 million. This also included on-site supervision and coordination with local builders to ensure that every construction was carried out in accordance with the original design. After paying the design fee and the business jet fee, Maweli still had $485 million left in his Citibank account. He was just waiting to acquire the Black Sea shipyard in Ukraine. 3 weeks later, when Maweli and his goddess were on vacation in Hawaii, he suddenly received a call from Ukraine. "Hello, Mr. Maweli, our Ukrainian military has considered it and is willing to cooperate with you to run the Black Sea shipyard together. When can you come to Ukraine again?" Maweli was enjoying the sunshine on the beach, the beautiful women and the waves, while holding the satellite phone, and said to the other end, "I will go there in the next 2 days and call you then." "Okay, then I'll wait for your news. Bye." "Well, bye." After Maweli hung up the phone, Jennifer handed him a glass of iced juice and asked him, "Do you have business to do again?" "Yes. This time it's a big deal." Maweli took the juice and drank a big sip comfortably. Since Jennifer shared with her father last time that Maweli bought the Bombardier Global Express and A380, Jennifer's father has also become particularly concerned about Maweli's career, always looking for opportunities to ask her daughter what Maweli is busy with recently, whether she needs an investor. Faced with her father's extra enthusiasm, Jennifer gave him a head back. It is said that raising a daughter is for the outside family, and this is true. Jennifer will not betray Maweli casually, nor will she interfere in his official business. "Then you are going to fly away again?" The goddess looked at Maweli reluctantly, and the feelings revealed in her eyes made people feel soft. "Fly away, and you will fly back again." Maweli smiled and pinched the goddess's face. Although the love between children is necessary, it should not be too greasy. Otherwise, it will affect the business. "Okay then." Jennifer pouted. She always remembered the Chinese saying that Maweli said in Beijing, "If the love between two people lasts for a long time, again, it's time to take off." At the Hawaii airport, Maweli, who was separated from the goddess's arms, sat bored on the plane, waiting for takeoff. The Black Sea shipyard in Ukraine currently has 2 aircraft carriers, which have been suspended until now due to lack of funds. One is the Varyag aircraft carrier, and the other is the Ulyanovsk nuclear-powered aircraft carrier. Considering the value of these 2 aircraft carriers, Maweli felt it was necessary to send people to contact some countries that need aircraft carriers to discuss how to sell them. Chapter 115 Ukrainian Navy Headquarters. The Varyag has been completed by 67%, and the remaining part can be completed in about 3 years. As for the Ulyanovsk nuclear-powered aircraft carrier, it is a long story. The ship started construction at the Black Sea shipyard in 1988. When the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, the ship had only completed 30% of the project. Due to a shortage of funds, the Ukrainian government was fooled by other countries and once wanted to split and dismember the nuclear-powered aircraft carrier. Fortunately, it was strongly opposed by the Navy Marshal and Admiral Petrovich and others, so it was not implemented. Otherwise, those officers and generals of the former Soviet Union might be angry and come back to life. Admiral Petrovich is the father of Major Shekhnaya, who received Maweli last time. This time, when Maweli just took a plane and arrived at the Ukrainian airport, he saw the heroic Major Shekhnaya waiting for Maweli to arrive in her military jeep. Today, Shekhnaya is still wearing her naval officer uniform. The close-fitting military uniform, which is tight around her slender waist, outlines Shekhnya's full bust. The delicate and fair skin unique to Ukrainians is fully displayed on her. Pink and smooth lips, coupled with a firm and small nose bridge, outline an exquisite face under her charming eyes. If Maweli hadn't known Shekhnya's identity in advance, and if she hadn't been wearing a military uniform, Maweli would definitely have mistaken her for a star or a model. He would never have associated her with a naval lieutenant. When Maweli got off the plane, Major Shekhnaya also got out of the jeep and came forward to greet him. "Good afternoon, Mr. Maweli. Welcome to Ukraine. We meet again." Good afternoon, Major Shekiniah. Maweli is not the kind of man who can't stand when seeing a beautiful woman. Even if the other party is a naval flower with a deep background, he still has to do what he should do. Get in the car, Mr. Maweli. I'll take you to our Ukrainian Navy headquarters. Admiral Petrovich is waiting for you. Sheknir smiled at Maweli. That smile, paired with her serious military uniform, was really pretty, with a kind of contrasting beauty. Admiral Petrovich? Maweli couldn't help but think for a moment. This admiral, isn't he? Yes, he is also my father. I believe you should have known it a long time ago, Mr. Maweli. Sheknir admitted without any pretense. Sure enough, female soldiers are straightforward and feel very different. Maweli nodded slightly and said nothing. Then he got on the jeep and headed to the Ukrainian Navy headquarters. With the continuous improvement of his status and strength, the places Maweli goes in and out are really awesome. He just came out of the Russian Navy headquarters a few weeks ago, and today he is going to the Ukrainian headquarters to meet the admiral. If this happened to an ordinary person, he could brag about it for a lifetime. Sheknir drove a military jeep and rushed all the way on the road. Soon, Maweli was taken to a large-scale military fortress with heavy military guards. Ukraine is a country full of women. The seriously unbalanced ratio of men to women has led to a large number of female soldiers in the Ukrainian army. While the jeep was driving in the military district, Maweli had seen several groups of Ukrainian female soldiers in naval uniforms. The scale was much larger than what he had seen in Russia. To put it in an exaggerated way, it was like coming to a country of women. No wonder Ukrainian men don't lack girlfriends. It's all because there are too many women. Mr. Maweli, our Ukrainian female soldiers are not bad, right? Major Sheknir asked Maweli casually while driving. Not bad. What are the criteria for judging? Figure, appearance, or marching ability? Maweli will not act recklessly in other people's territory. All possible misunderstandings must be minimized. His cautiousness made Major Sheknir look at him, and then smiled and said, Mr. Maweli, you don't have to be so reserved. From now on, you and our Ukrainian Navy will be in a cooperative relationship. Our Ukrainian military treats partners very favorably. I believe that with our support, fewer people will dare to touch you in the future. In this life, Ukraine's nuclear warheads and nuclear-powered aircraft carriers have not been destroyed. His military strength is indeed not to be underestimated. So it's no wonder that Sheknir said this in front of Maweli. Thank you for your support, Major Sheknir. Maweli said calmly in thanks. He will not be complacent and will not rashly intervene in the dispute between the two countries or the political struggle. He is just an arms dealer, and he will die miserably if he stands on the side casually. Maintaining neutrality and cooperation is his way of survival. Soon, the jeep drove to a military building with many Ukrainian naval flags hanging on both sides. We are here, Mr. Maweli. Admiral Petrovich is waiting for you upstairs. I'll take you there. Sheknir opened the car door with a sturdy figure and motioned Maweli to follow her. Maweli was really surprised by the waiting of the Ukrainian Navy admiral. When Sheknir took him to the conference room on the top floor of the military building, Maweli met the famous Admiral Petrovich. Like the admirals of other countries, Petrovich had various gorgeous medals and awe-inspiring high-level military ranks on his chest and shoulders. Every move exuded the iron-blooded temperament of a soldier. Hello, Mr. Maweli. Petrovich came to Maweli in a military posture and took the initiative to extend his right hand. Hello, Admiral Petrovich. Maweli also extended his hand to shake hands with the other party. It must be said that every admiral has his own style of doing things. Just like the one in front of him, he was neither deliberately late nor used his official power to oppress others. He felt that he should be a pragmatic military leader. This kind of person doesn't take any tricks, and all he wants is for you to get things done. Well, please sit down. Let's talk about the Black Sea shipyard. Petrovich didn't even look at his daughter. His attention was all on Maweli, the partner. After Maweli sat down, Admiral Petrovich said to him, Mr. Maweli, what method do you have to reverse the current situation of the Black Sea shipyard? I dare not guarantee to reverse it. I can only say that after the investment, we will try our best to save it. Admiral Petrovich. Maweli would not easily reveal his business plan to the Ukrainian Navy. At least before he invested in the shipyard, he would not make a fool of himself. Seeing that Mawei didn't say anything, Petrovich didn't force it, knowing that the other party was cautious. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 116, People's Liberation Army Northern Defense Fleet. So Petrovich changed the subject and said, Mr. Mawei, there is one thing I need to explain to you in advance. That is, when you acquire 50% of the shares of the Black Sea Shipyard, you will also need to bear the corresponding part of its annual losses. He is a very upright person and likes to say ugly things in advance so as not to make people feel that he is cheating. That's no problem, Admiral Petrovich. Mawei nodded calmly, and then, with the assistance of a lawyer, he signed a share transfer contract for the Black Sea Shipyard with the Ukrainian Navy. After the contract was signed, Mawei's heart was also mostly relieved. At this time, Admiral Petrovich turned the topic back to his first question, which was, Mr. Mawei, can you now explain how to reverse the current situation of our shipyard? Seeing the Ukrainian admiral asking again, Mawei knew that, if he kept it secret, it would cause estrangement. So he smiled and said in front of Petrovich and Shechnia, I think the turning point of the Black Sea Shipyard lies in the 2 aircraft carriers in the dock. Aircraft carrier? Are you talking about the Varyag and the Ulyanovsk? Admiral Petrovich asked Mawei with his eyes fixed. Their 2 aircraft carriers have been lying in the shipyard for more than 10 years. They have also looked for buyers, but few countries can afford them. Well, I should have a way to sell these 2 aircraft carriers. Due to the need for economic development, many countries in the 1990s did not have the strength to buy aircraft carriers. After 2000, these developing countries have the money to buy aircraft carriers, but they do not have the strength to build aircraft carriers. So Mawei naturally has no worries about sales. Which country are you going to sell it to? Admiral Petrovich asked him with concern. If things can really be as Mawei said, find a buyer and sell the aircraft carrier, then their Black Sea Shipyard can definitely be revived instantly. When the time comes, let's talk about it first. Mawei replied with a smile. There is only one conventional powered aircraft carrier in existence, but there are more than one country that needs one. This virtually puts Mawei in a commanding position in the transaction. I believe that some countries will give him special treatment in order to successfully buy the aircraft carrier. That's it for now. Happy cooperation, Mr. Mawei. Admiral Petrovich said, stretching out his right hand. He would not push Mawei too hard. After all, Mawei is a brother on the Russian side, not his subordinate. During the Soviet era, Ukraine and Russia were very good allies, and this relationship lasted until 2012 in the previous life. Happy cooperation, Admiral Petrovich. Mawei also stretched out his hand and said, after the negotiation on the shipyard, Mawei, accompanied by Major Shechnia, left the Ukrainian Navy headquarters by car. In the process of contacting Admiral Petrovich, Mawei not only understood the other party's personality and style of doing things, he also learned that the admiral trained his daughter Shechnia completely as a son or a subordinate. During the entire negotiation process, the two met like soldiers, and there was no eye contact. From this point of view, Mawei really sympathized with Shechnia. He believed that the Major's childhood must not have been very happy. Major Shechnia, do you have time next week? Maybe you want to go to China with me. When the jeep slowly stopped, Mawei turned to Shechnia and said, next week? Go to China? Talk about aircraft carriers? Shechnia's eyes showed a trace of surprise. In her cognition, it seems that with the domestic economic development, it is still impossible to afford the cost of aircraft carriers. Even if it can barely afford it, the annual maintenance cost of aircraft carriers is not a joke. Mawei knew that Europeans in the 1990s did not know much about China. They only thought it was a country with a large population and slow development. But they were wrong. I'll go over to make some connections. Will you come? Because the Black Sea Shipyard is not owned by Mawei alone. So he needs a Ukrainian officer to accompany him, so that he will not be criticized. Time, place, I will be there on time. Major Shekiniah answered very straightforwardly. She really couldn't stand Maweli. They were obviously in a cooperative relationship, but he refused to reveal a single word. If there was a chance, Shekiniah really wanted to tie Maweli to a stool and whip him with a whip. She would not let him go until he told her all the secrets. Next Wednesday afternoon, the location is Qingdao. See you then. Maweli said, got off the jeep, and left in the bodyguard's car. Only Shekiniah was left, looking at the direction he was going, wondering what she was thinking. A week passed in a blink of an eye, and it was soon Wednesday afternoon. In the terminal of Qingdao International Airport, a large group of fully armed Chinese soldiers with solemn expressions suddenly arrived at some point. They patrolled the terminal in groups of 2, on guard, as if some great person was going to arrive at the airport. Domestic tourists who saw this phenomenon didn't know what was going on. They kept looking at the group of soldiers, guessing, hey, what's going on today? Why are there so many soldiers? I don't know. This is the first time I've seen such a scene. I guess the army is going to receive someone. Just as the crowd was discussing this, a pure white Gulfstream G200 aircraft landed safely at Qingdao International Airport. As soon as the plane stopped, several military off-road vehicles, Dongfeng Mengshi, which had been waiting at the apron, drove to the front of the business jet one by one. Dongfeng Mengshi is a domestic ORV. It was originally developed in 2003, but the parallel world seems to have been pushed forward a little. Sitting on the plane, Maweli felt very cordial when looking at these familiar military vehicles that often appear in movie scenes. When he got off the plane accompanied by bodyguards, Maweli met Wu Kei, a senior officer of the Northern Defense Fleet of the People's Liberation Army who came to greet him this time. This was Maweli's first time dealing with the domestic military. Looking at the familiar military uniforms, Maweli looked at them carefully for a long time. Hello, Mr. Maweli. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to visit our Northern Defense Fleet. I'm Wu Kei from the Northern Defense Fleet of the Chinese People's Liberation Army. Welcome. Wu Kei is the youngest boy in the fleet. He spoke to Maweli in Chinese with full energy. There was a special translator next to him to communicate for both parties. Hearing this friendly Chinese, Maweli felt an indescribable sense of pleasure. However, due to nationality issues, he still used Russian and asked the female translator to try to translate. Hello, Wu Kei. Thank you very much for your reception. Chapter 117 Military Vehicle leading the way. Hello, Wu Kei. Thank you for your hospitality. Maweli said, looking at the Dongfeng Warrior off-road vehicles around, especially the military license plates on the bumpers. When driving on the road, the traffic police dare not stop them casually, absolutely domineering. You're welcome, Mr. Maweli. You are a Russian foreign guest, and we are the host. These are what we should do. Wu Kei smiled politely at Maweli. Then he continued, by the way, Mr. Maweli, when will the major sent by the Ukrainian Navy arrive? Wu Kei was asking about Shekiniah. After hearing this, Maweli calculated the time and simply replied, she should be here soon, and it will probably be here soon. After Maweli finished speaking, less than 10 minutes later, a pure white A320 passenger plane arrived at Qingdao Airport on time. The Ukrainian flag printed on the passenger plane made it clear who the visitor was. Mr. Wu Kei, let me introduce you. This is the Ukrainian Navy Major, Miss Shekiniah. Maweli looked at Shekiniah who got off the plane. Today, she was dressed differently from before. She had changed her navy trousers into a skirt. Not only did she show the heroic spirit of the Ukrainian female officer, but she was also elegant and charming. In addition to the skirt, Maweli also noticed that Shekiniah deliberately put on light makeup to modify her delicate face. This also made her a beautiful scenery at the Qingdao airport, attracting many soldiers to cast their attention to her quietly. After the three of them exchanged greetings at the airport, Wu Kei asked the driver to drive the big red flag luxury car they used to welcome Maweli, and he also asked the driver to open the door for Maweli and Shekiniah and escort them to the car. Mr. Maweli, Miss Shekiniah, please. Wu Kei politely extended his right hand. Thank you. After thanking her, Shekiniah bent down and got into the car. When the red flag car started slowly and drove out of the apron smoothly, Maweli and Shekiniah, who were sitting in the back seat of the car, found that there was no car along the way. The road was so empty that it was unbelievable. Mawei, why is there no car on the road? Could it be? Shikmihai seemed to see that this was obviously the highest courtesy of the military to the two. Well, it should be. While Mawei was talking, the big red flag car, escorted by the Dongfeng warrior, drove all the way to the airport terminal driveway unimpeded. At this time, many Chinese people who were watching the excitement were already standing outside the terminal. When the big red flag car appeared, the onlookers pointed at the convoy and started talking. Damn, military vehicles are leading the way. It seems that the person sitting in the red flag car must be a big shot, right? No wonder there are so many soldiers guarding the airport. It must be the person in the shuttle bus. That's right. Awesome. I just saw that there were two white foreigners sitting in the red flag car, one of whom was a female foreigner wearing a military uniform. I guess the person who was picking up was a senior military official from abroad. The onlookers outside were talking about it, and Mawei in the car couldn't hear it for the time being. But he could guess it, based on the expressions and body movements of the Chinese people when they spoke. It is very likely that they were talking about him and Shekiniah. Because today, Major Shekiniah was wearing a dignified and elegant military skirt, revealing her fair and well-proportioned long legs. This made Mawei always see two conspicuous white objects in his peripheral vision, shaking slightly as the car moved. It must be said that the temptation of military uniforms is very strong. The reason is that under the serious and dignified package, there is an impulse and desire to break this solemnity. Mawei, do you think this deal can be negotiated successfully? When the convoy was halfway, Shekiniah suddenly turned around and asked Mawei with a sweet breath. What deal? I came here just to establish international friendship. Mawei answered calmly. Hearing this, Shekiniah, who was sitting next to him, really couldn't understand why he was so tight-lipped until now. It seems necessary to put him in shackles and chains. If he can't be tortured, he will be uncomfortable. Oh, really? Then I want to see later. You really don't want to talk about any business? Shekiniah also got angry. She wanted to see how long Mawei could be mysterious. However, things were just as Mawei said. During the military reception, the two sides did not discuss any transactions at all. Even the word aircraft carrier was not mentioned. It was just an international visit about Sino-Russian friendship. Senior Officer Wu Kei took Mawei and Shekiniah to visit the command center of the Northern Defense Fleet, the Qingdao base. He even took Mawei to see the ships they had. For example, the Type 051 missile destroyer, which NATO calls the Luda class. For example, the Type 035 conventional submarine, which NATO calls the Ming class. There are also Type 053H3 missile frigates, national defense mobilization ships, etc. Shekiniah, who was accompanying her, was really confused. She completely understood what Mawei was up to. The visit lasted for an entire afternoon. Towards evening, Officer Wu Kei sent Mawei and Shekiniah to the 4-star hotel, designated by the military region. Then he enthusiastically invited Mawei and Shekiniah. Mr. Mawei, Ms. Shekiniah, our Northern Defense Fleet has prepared a warm welcome party for you tonight. I hope you will attend it. When Shekiniah heard this, she wanted to go back to her room. As a Ukrainian Navy, she had great ambitions and aspirations since she was a child. Now her biggest wish is to save the Black Sea shipyard from decline and save the future of the Ukrainian Navy. But Mawei spent $100 million to acquire the shipyard, and in the end he came here, not to talk about business, but to do some international socializing. Can't this be done at other times? I'm a little tired, so I won't attend the party. Sorry. Shekiniah refused mercilessly. This made Wu Kei very embarrassed. He didn't expect the Ukrainian guests to be so disrespectful. It's okay, I'll go. In order not to embarrass Wu Kei too much, Mawei said that he would be there on time. By the way, watch the performance of the military art troupe. Okay, thank you, Mr. Mawei. I'll send someone to pick you up then. Wu Kei looked at Mawei with gratitude and said, if the two foreign guests don't attend the welcome party, then he will be considered incompetent. You're welcome, see you then. Mawei smiled and shook hands with Wu Kei, thanking him for his reception today. In the evening, the welcome party began, and as expected, only Maweli was in attendance, and Sheknia stayed in the room, depressed. Obviously, she had a lot of ambiguity about Maweli's cynicism. Thanks to book friend HJZ666 for the 160,000 reward, and book friends Cheyenne Jingbeng and Gao Dasha-chan for the 10,000 reward. The author will remember these rewards, and will definitely pay them back. Domestic military plots cannot be written too deeply, otherwise they will be harmonized immediately. These 2 chapters have been conceived for a long time, and it took a day to write them. Chapter 118 News from the aircraft carrier. However, just when Shekania was in such an irritable mood, the satellite phone on the desk rang at this time. She looked at the number, and found that it was her father calling. Shekania immediately picked up the phone, and wanted to tell her father exactly what happened today. But before she could speak, she heard her father's happy voice on the other end of the phone. "You did a good job this time. By the way, thank Maweli for me." After hearing her father's voice, Shekania was a little dazed. To be precise, she was stunned. She had no idea what was going on. After several inquiries, she learned from her father that just now, the Ukrainian Navy headquarters received an invitation for negotiation from another country. The content was about the Variag aircraft carrier in the Black Sea shipyard, which was 67% completed. After hearing the news, Shekania's mind instantly appeared Maweli's face. "I have no idea when he finished this matter." After talking to her father on the phone, Shekania immediately put on her military jacket, and then hurried to the Northern Defense Fleet to apologize to Maweli for what happened in the evening. At the same time, Maweli in the banquet hall sat in the front row in the middle, as if nothing had happened, admiring the performance of the art soldiers on the stage. Sitting around him were senior officers of the Northern Defense Fleet, including many military district leaders with medals and outstanding military exploits. "Mr. Maweli, are you satisfied with the performance of the art soldiers on the stage?" Wu-Kei asked Maweli softly during the welcome party. "If it weren't for the military's express prohibition of drinking during working hours. Otherwise, the hospitable Wu-Kei would definitely drag Maweli to fight 300 rounds. Not bad." Maweli smiled and replied. Being in the center of the crowd, Maweli could feel the attention from all around from time to time. Even the art soldiers on the stage who performed hard. They often focused their attention on Maweli, the Russian foreign guest. The group of naval commanders and soldiers who were watching the performance together had heard about Maweli's arrival. So during the banquet, the topic that everyone discussed the most was about Maweli. "Hey, have you heard about it?" The Russian foreign guest sitting at the main table in the front row seems to be quite important. A naval soldier whispered to his comrades at the same table. After hearing this, the comrades asked back with some disapproval, "Can someone who considered that position not be quite important? Tell us what news you have found out. Don't keep us in suspense, okay? Okay. I heard that the Russian foreign guest came from the Black Sea shipyard in Ukraine. You know the Black Sea shipyard, right? I heard that there are 2 ready-made aircraft carriers there, one of which is nuclear powered. Isn't it awesome?" The comrade who kept people in suspense liked to talk in a roundabout way without making things clear. After hearing this, everyone at the table immediately started to associate things. "Aircraft carrier? According to you, our fleet will have an aircraft carrier? Is that true?" a naval soldier asked excitedly. At that time in 2000, there were only a handful of countries that could build aircraft carriers, and it is still the same in 2019. Therefore, owning an aircraft carrier is the pride and dream of every naval officer and every naval soldier, not to mention how glorious it is. Damn, a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier. Those who are selected to board the ship will be so happy. How glorious it is. Every soldier considers it from a different perspective. As soon as the rumor appeared, some people began to imagine serving on an aircraft carrier. It can be seen that it is a temptation for the Navy. I heard it too, but it's not certain yet. Don't spread it nonsense. Even if you spread it nonsense, don't say it was said by me. Do you understand? Maweli could fully understand the discussions of the soldiers around him. Others thought he was a Russian foreign guest and couldn't understand Chinese without a translator. But Maweli heard it clearly and pretended not to hear it. 20 minutes later, the welcome party officially ended. Maweli, with Wukei's farewell, got on the red flag and prepared to go back to the hotel to take a shower and sleep. But just when he was about to get in the car, he saw a military jeep driving in front of the red flag at lightning speed. Then, the car door opened, and a graceful woman in a neat Ukrainian military uniform hurriedly got out of the car and walked towards Maweli. "Miss Sheknia?" Wukei looked at the female major in a daze. "Didn't she say she couldn't come? Why did she come at the end of the party?" Compared to Wukei's confusion, Maweli knew the reason. That was the Ukrainian Navy headquarters, which must have received a relevant negotiation invitation. "Maweli, I'm here to apologize to you, and Wukei, I'm really sorry for what happened just now." As a Ukrainian female officer, Sheknia didn't have the kind of delicate and artificiality of ordinary women. If you make a mistake, you should admit it, apologize, and repent. There is no heirs to speak of, and there is no step to step down. "It's okay, Miss Sheknia." Wukei accepted the apology generously. After all, his reception task was successfully completed. Maweli, who was standing in front of the big red flag car, was stretched out by the big headlights of the car. He was not the kind of man with a chicken stomach, so he tilted his head and motioned to Sheknia, "Get in the car." Shekina looked at Maweli gratefully and suddenly found that Maweli was a good person, except that he loved to keep a secret. The two got on the red flag car one after another, and then the car started with the sound of the door closing and drove to the hotel. On the way, Maweli leaned against the seat because of sleepiness and gradually fell asleep. Only Shekina, who was also sitting in the back seat, was left, staring at the night outside the window in a daze. Thinking back to the mood during the day, Shekina couldn't help feeling ashamed and her face was hot. "If I had known earlier, I wouldn't be so extreme in doing things. It seems that I have to change it in the future." Just as she was thinking this, the car suddenly made a small turn, causing Maweli's head, which was originally leaning on the cushion, to tilt to the side. It landed right near Shekina's right shoulder, but not on it. Shekina couldn't help but glance at Maweli and found that his neck was crooked at this time, lacking support. Over time, it is very likely that the neck will become crooked, that is, the neck will cramp. In order not to wake Maweli up to rest, Shekina suddenly bit her lip and made the next decision. She raised her bare hands and gently pushed Maweli against her shoulder. In this way, he can relax and will not be woken up. Just think of it as compensation for what happened during the day. The car drove on the road for more than 10 minutes, and Shekina let Maweli lean on it for more than 10 minutes. Fortunately, Maweli did not drool during this period. Otherwise, it would wet Shekina's military uniform, which would be a big sin. Chapter 119 The Attractive Female Officer. When the red flag car stopped in front of the hotel, Shekina couldn't help but stretch out her bare hand and gently pushed Maweli, and said to him, "Wake up, we are here." "Sorry, I just fell asleep." Maweli quickly apologized and slept on the shoulders of a female officer. This was the first time he had ever done this. "It's okay." Shekina rubbed her sore shoulders, then turned around and said to Maweli, "Anything else tonight? How about I treat you to a drink as an apology for what happened during the day?" The dim light reflected on Shekina's delicate face. The serious and neat military uniform would make any man have some wild thoughts and couldn't control himself. But this didn't include Maweli. Forget about the drink. He flatly refused. Almost at the same time as the voice fell, Shekina, who was sitting next to him, had a dark expression and was obviously hit. After all, she was the flower of the Ukrainian Navy and her father was an admiral. Usually, she was invited by others, and she rarely took the initiative to invite others. But Maweli rejected her directly, which was really embarrassing. However, just when Shekina's expression was gradually gloomy, Maweli suddenly changed the subject and said, "Why don't I buy you a drink?" The charm of language is really endless. The same sentence, divided into two parts, can make your mood go up and down like a roller coaster, which is very exciting. Shekina stared at Maweli. After watching for 2 seconds, she couldn't help but smile beautifully and then asked Maweli without thinking, "Okay, then, let's go to your room to drink later?" Maweli showed a strange expression after hearing this. "Go to my room to drink? That's not good, right? After hearing what he said, Shikmiya suddenly realized the problem, so her face was slightly hot, and she quickly changed her words. Then go to my room to drink? Go to your room to drink? That seems to be even worse, right? Maweli blinked helplessly. This man and woman were alone in a room with a bed, wine, and hot water. It was going to force people to be evil. Amitabha, good and good. As soon as the voice fell, Shikmiya, who realized that she had made 2 consecutive slips of the tongue, suddenly felt ashamed to stay in the car. Hurry up and bite her lips in shame, and said to Maweli, then you decide the location. After that, she opened the car door and ran away first. Only Maweli was left sitting alone in the back seat of the car, rubbing his temple helplessly. In the car, there was still a trace of Shikmiya's shampoo scent. Maweli opened the door, walked out of the red flag car, and asked the butler to bring a bottle of Romanican tea from 1985 and a bottle of Dom Perigorks from 1983. 15 minutes later, in Maweli's room, the butler Ivan came to the coffee table with 2 bottles of wine, and opened them for the young master himself. Then he was very tactful, and didn't ask any more questions. He left 2 sets of wine glasses, and walked out the door. He even asked the Russian bodyguards guarding the door to stand at the other end of the corridor so as not to disturb the young master's interest later. The Russian bodyguards, who only had bodies but no brains, didn't understand these delicate details, so they had to do as they were told without knowing what to do. As soon as the bodyguards moved to the other end of the corridor, the door of their young master's room was rang by a beautiful woman in military uniform. Ding dong. The crisp doorbell sound made people feel better. Maweli opened the door and let the woman waiting outside in. Almost the moment the door opened, he saw Shikmiya standing in front of him with long flowing hair and elegant temperament. Shikmiya, who took off her military cap and let down her long hair, had a completely different charm from that in the daytime. She was a little more charming and less serious. For a moment, Maweli almost didn't recognize her. Why are you standing at the door like this? Aren't you going to invite me in? Shikmiya stretched out her bare hand and gently stroked her hair. In the army, few soldiers can see her charming appearance now. It is absolutely imaginative. Come in. Maweli made way, and then saw Shikmiya, and smiled at him. Then she walked straight into Maweli's room, and came to the living room, where 2 bottles of wine were placed. Romanican tea 1985. As the daughter of a general, Shikmiya naturally had some vision. She could tell the origin of the red wine at a glance. But there was one thing she didn't quite understand, that is, where these 2 bottles of wine came from. The hotel didn't seem to provide red wine of this quality. Well, we always have it on the plane. Maweli answered easily. He had almost finished the wine he bought last time in the United States. It is estimated that he will have to ask the butler to purchase a new batch in a while. Hearing that Maweli was so good at enjoying himself, Shikmiya blinked and said nothing. She was used to military life, so she couldn't live as comfortably as Maweli. Do you want to drink red wine or champagne first? Maweli poured himself a glass of red wine and then asked Shikmiya. Red wine. Shikmiya said, sitting down gracefully next to Maweli. Then the 2 began to taste the fine wine in front of them. Cheers. Cheers. As 3 or 5 glasses of red wine and champagne were drunk, the temperature in the room gradually rose. Shikmiya was already a little tipsy, and her red and hot face made her look a little cute, which formed a sharp contrast with the military uniform on her. How about we stop drinking today? Maweli suggested, when he saw that the other party was a little drunk. But he was rejected by Shikmiya. Stop drinking so soon. I haven't had enough fun yet. I'm sorry for the daytime. Come on, cheers. Shikmiya said, pouring herself another glass of red wine, then clinked the glass with Maweli, and then raised her head to drink it all. Maweli looked at Shikmiya under the light, and felt that she was looking for him to drink, not just to apologize. Chapter 120. The night is seductive. Buying a nuclear bomb? There may be a desire to talk or vent. Perhaps it is, because the military life has been too long and too depressing. Are you okay? If you drink like this, you won't be able to get out of bed tomorrow. Maweli drank the red wine in the glass. This amount of wine is not a problem for him. If you can't get up, then you can't get up. At worst, I'll sleep in your room tonight. Shikmiya looked at Maweli with a slightly drunk expression. The charm in her eyes didn't seem to be a joke. Faced with such direct words, Mawei was really stunned. A woman like Shekiniya, who combines beauty, courage, figure, and background, can be said to be the goddess in the hearts of most men in the army. Perhaps it is because of her status and conditions that no one can match her. So Shekiniya felt particularly empty and couldn't find support. In addition, her father had trained her in a military way since she was a child, which made Shekiniya lack emotional experience. Sleeping here is no problem. Which room do you want to sleep in? Anyway, there are many rooms in the suite, so Mawei doesn't have to worry about having one more person living there. Which room do you want to sleep in? Shekiniya asked Mawei with a slightly drunk face. I'll sleep in the room opposite. Mawei pointed to the right side of the living room. Before he put his hand down, Shekiniya suddenly smiled and said to him, then I'll sleep in the room opposite. After saying that, Shekiniya raised her head and drank a large glass of red wine. Looking at the way she drank, it was obvious that she wanted to vent the emotions that had accumulated in her heart for a long time. Mawei looked at the woman in front of him who looked strong on the outside but very fragile on the inside and shook his head helplessly. However, what he didn't expect was that after Shekiniya finished drinking a large glass of red wine, she didn't even have time to put the glass down and she fell asleep with her head tilted. This really surprised Mawei. Seeing that the Ukrainian female major had fallen asleep, Mawei had to take the wine glass from her hand and then carried her into the room. After a night, when Mawei woke up again, Shekiniya was no longer by the bed. There was only a white note with delicate handwriting. Mawei, I'm going back to Ukraine first. Goodbye. There was no other extra words on the note, just like Shekiniya, who was decisive and capable. Mawei looked at the words on the note and didn't know what he was thinking. After finishing his trip to China, Mawei used a satellite phone to call the Ukrainian Navy. Hello, good morning, Admiral Petrovich. I have something I want to ask you for help. What is the matter? Please tell me, Mr. Mawei. There is no need to be polite between us. Petrovich was very happy to receive Mawei's call. Sure enough, agreeing to cooperate with Mawei was an extremely correct decision. It wasn't long after that, and a reliable buyer was found. The efficiency is really outstanding. It's like this, Admiral Petrovich, I heard that your country has been trying to sell a batch of military weapons. I wonder if there is an opportunity to introduce me to some. I might want to buy some. The military weapons that Mawei mentioned on the phone were the large number of property that Ukraine received when the former Soviet Union collapsed. This includes a large number of strategic missiles. For example, intercontinental ballistic missiles, long-range missiles and medium-range missiles. These missiles are not so-called tactical missiles. They are all equipped with nuclear warheads. The range is usually more than 1,000 kilometers. In addition to the powerful strategic missiles, nuclear-powered submarines, aircraft carriers, several main destroyers, two 160 supersonic bombers, two 22 supersonic bombers, MiG-29 fighters, Su-27 fighters, and 225 super transport aircraft, etc. These are all the property left behind when the former Soviet Union split up. Many countries have studied for 10 or 20 years, but they will never reach such a height. In short, Ukraine has most of the weapons and technologies that Russia has. Even some important military production lines are in Ukraine. Its military strength is second only to Russia. Mr. Mawei, do you want to buy our Ukrainian military weapons? What kind of weapons? Could it be nuclear warheads? Admiral Petrovich couldn't help but ask on the phone. Chapter 121 Su-27, Tu-160 supersonic bomber. Not a nuclear bomb, not a nuclear bomb. I plan to buy a few Tu-160 supersonic bombers and Su-27 fighters, and then sell them together with aircraft carriers. This way the profit should be greater. Mawei explained, almost startled. He dared not touch nuclear warheads casually. At least so far, with his background and connections, he is far from touching nuclear bombs. Nuclear peace. Everything is based on peace. Oh, that's good. Mr. Mawei, I think I can send someone to help you contact them. Admiral Petrovich said to Mawei with relief. If it is a transaction of the level of nuclear bombs, it will attract strong attention from other countries in the world, especially the European Union. Russia is a competitor of the European Union and has not joined the European Union. Recently, the European Union has proposed that Ukraine destroy these nuclear warheads and supersonic bombers in the warehouse and give certain compensation. But how much compensation will be? The entire European Union is still under discussion and has not yet decided. It is estimated to be around 10 million to 20 million US dollars. Admiral Petrovich also knew that Ukraine's economy was not good and the army could not afford to pay for the maintenance of so many advanced weapons. So out of helplessness, it was necessary to sell some weapons to reduce the burden. Okay, thank you first, Admiral Petrovich. Maweli thanked him on the phone. The deal he made with the Ukrainian military was only the initial stage of cooperation between the two sides. When the relationship matures, there will be follow-up research and development of various top military weapons, such as gas turbine engines, turbofan engines, air-to-air missiles, etc. You're welcome, Mr. Maweli. I also want to thank you for your help to our Black Sea shipyard, Admiral Petrovich said to Maweli sincerely. After talking to the admiral on the phone, Maweli also took his private plane back to Russia. Through the previous business layout, Maweli slowly moved many important industries to Russia. For example, Google, VGuest, Blizzard Games, etc. In this way, it can prevent the wind direction from changing and damaging its own property. Secondly, it can also give itself an extra guarantee. During the time when he returned to Russia, Maweli became the rich young master who had everything he wanted. On weekdays, he enjoyed the maid service, and when he was bored, he would play with Winnie the Bear and Tigger in the room. After 2 or 3 weeks, the 3-month-old Tigger had grown to the size of a cheetah. But the interesting thing was that Tigger still pestered Maweli to feed her milk. A 4-month-old tiger sucked milk with great force. Maweli tried to dip his finger in milk and put it into Tigger's mouth. Then the suction he felt on his finger suddenly gave Maweli a very bold idea. That is, if he paid a pretty wet nurse to feed her milk, would the scene be very fragrant? Of course, this idea was just a casual thought. Before Maweli could put it into action, news came from Ukraine. Maweli was scheduled to go to the Ukrainian Air Force Base to discuss the deal next Tuesday. The pleasant time always passes quite briefly. Being busy and making a career is the main theme of the Reborn. When Maweli arrived at the Ukrainian International Airport by plane, he saw a whole row of old Soviet military vehicles, namely UAS-469, which were first produced in 1973, parked on the apron. Due to economic difficulties, Ukraine seriously lacks independent research and development capabilities and relies on old capital more than Russia. This directly leads to their military vehicles still using all-terrain vehicles developed by the former Soviet Union. Seeing this, Maweli really didn't know what to say. Hello, Mr. Maweli, I'm the colonel of the 32nd Air Force Base of Ukraine, Shini. I heard from Admiral Petrovich that you are interested in purchasing our Su-27 fighter jets, 160 supersonic bombers. After Maweli got off the plane, a man in a Ukrainian Air Force uniform came up to communicate with him. Judging from the military emblem on the man's shoulder, he is a colonel of the Ukrainian Air Force. Obviously, he was sent by his superiors to meet Maweli, a big customer. Hello, Colonel Sheni, thank you for waiting for me for so long at the airport. Maweli stretched out his right hand and shook hands with the colonel. Having experienced the baptism of Russian Navy Vice Admiral, Indian Admiral, and Ukrainian Admiral, Maweli now has less psychological pressure on officers below the rank of Major General. You're welcome, Mr. Maweli. It's our honor to receive you, Colonel Sheni said sincerely. Before he came, he heard from his superiors that Maweli had invested in the Black Sea shipyard and found a buyer for the aircraft carrier to come to Ukraine for negotiations. Judging from what the leaders said, they admired Maweli's ability to turn things around. They also hoped that by cooperating with him, they could bring a glimmer of hope to the Ukrainian Air Force. Seeing that the guests had arrived, Colonel Zni then said to Maweli, Mr. Maweli, it's almost time. How about we set off now and visit our Air Force base? After listening to Colonel Zenai's words, Mawei shook his head slightly and said, I'm afraid we can't set off now, because the meeting gift I sent to your army seems to have not been delivered yet. How about we wait a little longer? Meeting gift? What is the meeting gift, Mr. Mawei? Colonel Zenai asked Mawei with a surprised expression. He didn't understand what kind of meeting gift it was, that he had to wait for it to arrive. In fact, people can go to the Air Force base first. After all, the big guys in the base are waiting. If you are late, the impression will not be very good. However, just as Colonel Zenai was thinking this, a large transport plane landed belatedly at the Ukrainian airport. 5 minutes later, the door of the transport plane opened, and Colonel Zenai saw that there were 2 military off-road vehicles with the Ukrainian flag printed on them. The key is to look at its shape, which is neither a Hummer nor a Tiger armored vehicle. It was a domineering military vehicle that had never been seen before. This made Colonel Zenai a little confused. Mr. Mawei, these 2 military off-road vehicles are the gifts you specially prepared. Colonel Zenai's eyes shone with a strange light when he spoke. Compared with the old-fashioned UAZ 469 that their army has been driving, it is obvious that Mawei's 2 military vehicles are much more handsome and cool. And looking at its domineering appearance, it can be felt at a glance that the performance of the military vehicle is also superior to that of UAZ. In short, it is a complete defeat. That's right, Colonel Zenai, if your army likes it, I can send a few more later, Mawei said lightly. For him, the 2 cars are just small gifts, and they don't cost much money at all. Chapter 122 Domestic Warriors, Air Force Command Center. Thank you so much, Mr. Mawei. Oh, by the way, I want to ask, which country produced these 2 military vehicles? What model? Colonel Zenai thought for a long time, but he just couldn't remember where he had seen such military vehicles. Mawei smiled after hearing this, and then answered like a treasure. To be honest, Colonel Zenai, the 2 military vehicles in the transport plane are made in China. The model is Dongfeng Mengshi. Equipped with a 6.5T V8 diesel supercharged engine, matched with a 4-speed automatic transmission. Compared with the American Hummer, it uses more advanced technology and has slightly better performance. Dongfeng Mengshi made in China? Colonel Zenai was a little confused after hearing this. In his impression, it seems that China's military power is not very strong. When can they actually build a military vehicle that is more powerful than their Ukraine? It's unimaginable. Yes, it's made in China. Good quality and low price. Super cost effective. Every word Mawei said is true. The price of a Dongfeng Mengshi is less than $50,000 price in 2000. Compared to the expensive military Hummer, it is so cost effective that people are rushing to buy it. After hearing what Mawei said, Colonel Zenai was in a daze. If it weren't for Mawei's identity and background, he would have doubted whether what he just heard was true. Mr. Mawei, thank you very much for the 2 gifts you gave us. I believe that, when we drive back to the base later, Major General Bolavov and his men will definitely like it very much. Colonel Zenai came back to his senses and said to Mawei with a solemn oath. Although they are the Ukrainian Air Force, they can't drive fighters and bombers when they go out. To be honest, driving those old Soviet military vehicles is really embarrassing. After all, the MiG-29 fighters and Su-27 fighters parked in their base are all. The sense of gap is too strong. Like it, Mawei said with a smile. This favor is really a big profit. The Dongfeng Warrior bought at a low price from China was handed over to the Ukrainian Air Force that needed military vehicles. It was only $100,000, but it gave off the momentum of military Hummer. When Mawei sat in the Dongfeng Warrior and followed Colonel Zenai all the way to the 32nd Air Force Base in Ukraine. Just as the colonel said just now, almost all the Ukrainian soldiers and generals who saw the Dongfeng military vehicles were deeply attracted by the Tycoon military vehicles printed with the Ukrainian flag. Even the soldiers standing guard at the door couldn't help but squint their eyes and kept looking at their new military vehicles. Mawei took all these feedback into his eyes. Ukraine's economy is really bad. Obviously, there are so many advanced military industries that lead the world, but because they are out of touch with the times, domestic development has stagnated and even regressed. Two Danfeng warrior military vehicles drove into the Air Force base in a dusty manner. 10 minutes later, Mawei will also meet one of the important figures in the base, Major General Balevov. He is the main person in charge of negotiating this transaction. Major General Balevov, wearing the uniform of a Ukrainian Air Force officer and military boots, stood at the gate of the base command center with his hands behind his back, waiting for Mawei to arrive. Behind him stood the officers of the Air Force base. When two majestic and powerful Danfeng warriors appeared in front of Major General Balevov, the Major General's calm face suddenly twitched slightly. Obviously, he did not expect that the guest was not riding their UAS-469 military vehicle. Major General Balevov, let me report to you, this is Mr. Mawei from Russia. And, Major General, these two Danfeng warrior off-road vehicles are Mr. Mawei's gift to our Air Force. Colonel Shini excitedly and loudly reported to Major General Balevov as soon as he got off the car. So it's a gift? Balevov couldn't help but raise his eyebrows after hearing this. When he first saw the military vehicle, he mistakenly thought it was the other party, deliberately trying to give the Ukrainian Air Force a warning to show how awesome he was. But now, after hearing his subordinate's explanation, Major General Balevov immediately realized that he was too sensitive. He almost misunderstood the guests from Russia. Haha. Mr. Mawei, thank you very much for giving us this gift from the military. The flag of Ukraine is printed here, which is really thoughtful. Major General Balevov smiled and stepped forward, only to find the Ukrainian flag on the side of the car body. The group of Air Force officers standing behind him, after hearing that these two cool military vehicles were gifts brought by the guests, looked at Mawei with gratitude. It was obvious from their eyes that they wanted to express that with these two new military vehicles in the future, they will no longer have to drive those old Soviet cars when they go out. Whoever drives knows the feeling of being behind the times. When the Air Force officers were thinking about this, Major General Balevov had already stretched out his right hand, ready to shake hands with Mawei. Since Mawei had been negotiating cooperation everywhere, his right hand was almost deformed by others' handshakes. But this is not bad. Thinking back to the kissing gift in eBay, it seems that just shaking hands is not bad. Hello, Major General Balevov, if your army likes it, the next few Danfeng warriors will be delivered next week. As a major arms dealer, Mawei wanted this charm. Since the Ukrainian Air Force likes it, there is no reason for him not to send a few more to improve the relationship. Anyway, the car is cheap. Hearing that Mawei was so generous and wanted to send a few more military vehicles, Major General Balevov and the group of Air Force officers behind him showed bright expressions on their faces. Thank you so much, Mr. Mawei. On behalf of all the soldiers of the 32nd Air Force Base of Ukraine, I would like to thank you, Major General Balevov said, and saluted Mawei to show his recognition and respect. Mawei naturally responded with a polite military salute. You're welcome, Major General Balevov, it's just a piece of cake. Haha. Mr. Mawei, you are really modest. Then how about I take you to visit the headquarters of our Air Force Base and the military warehouse? After a simple greeting, Major General Balevov directly cut into the topic of today, which is the transaction of fighters and bombers. These fighters have been in their warehouse for many years. The annual maintenance costs are so high that they have always been a headache for the Air Force Base. Sure, Major General Balevov, I will follow the host's wishes, Mawei said with ease. In the past 2 months, he has visited the military base more times than he has visited the company. He is already considered a half acquaintance of the military. Well, Mr. Mawei, please follow me, Major General Balevov said, leading Mawei into their combat center. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 123, the world's only in 225 super transport aircraft. The command center of the 32nd Air Force Base in Ukraine is just like what Mawei often sees in movies. In the huge hall, the first thing that comes into view is a huge electronic display screen, which shows all the military intelligence in the regulatory area. Under the huge electronic screen, There are rows of Air Force intelligence personnel, each in front of the computer, doing their own work. Mr. Mawei, this is our Air Force Command Center. You can see those green icons on the screen. They are in our jurisdiction. The warehouse 100 meters away from here is where we store e.g. fighters and bombers. Please follow me. Major General Bolevov briefly introduced the environment to Mawei. Then he took him to the base warehouse to admire their inventory of fighter planes. When the iron door of the military warehouse slowly opened, the scene in front of him made Mawei reluctant to even blink. Su-27 fighter, MiG-29 fighter, Su-25 fighter, Su-24 fighter bomber. The dazzling Soviet fighters were neatly parked in the front row of the warehouse, which made the military fanatic in Mawei's blood excited. He really wanted to buy all these fighters in one go. Mr. Mawei, there are two Tu-160, Tu-22-95 supersonic strategic bombers and an 225 super transport aircraft parked in the back of the warehouse. Do you want to go and see them with me? Major General Bolevov proudly introduced to Mawei. These planes in front are the precious wealth of their air force. Okay, Major General Bolevov, Mawei said, smiling. It seems that he is going to bleed a lot today. What is in front of him is a treasure. After the disintegration of the Soviet Union, Ukraine received a lot of weapons and equipment. There are more than 2,150 high combat aircraft alone. Among them, there are 19 Tu-160 supersonic bombers. There are more than 140 Tu-95 and Tu-22 strategic bombers. There are more than 670 Su-27, MiG-29, Su-25, and Su-24 fighters. It is simply a world-class military treasure. It is a pity that Ukraine in the previous life abandoned its own martial arts and wanted to join the arms of NATO. However, in the end, not only was it played with, but it only spent $15 million to let Ukraine destroy all its precious nuclear warheads, bombers, and nuclear-powered aircraft carriers. This kind of crazy and wasteful behavior will make even a wasteful local tyrant like Mawei feel very heartbroken. If I had known this earlier, I might as well join the arms of China. After all, China is a famous country of etiquette. With the loyalty of the Chinese people, Ukraine will definitely be able to eat and drink well. At least it will not be so miserable. However, these are all things in the previous life. In this life, Mawei must not let Ukraine degenerate like this. When Major General Bolevov and a group of Air Force officers took Mawei into the depths of the military warehouse, Mawei saw the Tu-160 and Tu-22 supersonic bombers that rarely appear even in movies. The light gray streamlined fuselage gives people a sense of the future. The ultra-high combat performance allows the bomber to cruise at high altitude subsonic speed and conduct supersonic raids. It can launch long-range cruise missiles to attack outside the enemy's air defense network. Moreover, it can also carry out air defense suppression missions and launch short-range missiles to destroy air units. More importantly, when the Tu-160 supersonic bomber carries a nuclear warhead missile, then it launches a nuclear destruction strike on the enemy's strategic targets. So the EU is trying hard to ask Ukraine to destroy these super bombers. What they are afraid of is that, if a war breaks out, they will directly throw 2 nuclear missiles over, and then Britain and France will be gone in an instant. Mr. Mawei, how is it? This is our Tu-160 and Tu-22 bombers. They look good, right? The performance is also top-notch. And the one behind is our An-225 super transport aircraft. So far, this aircraft is the largest transport aircraft in the world, and there is only one. Major General Bolevov introduced to Mawei with pride. The An-225 super transport aircraft has a total length of 84 meters, a cargo hold length of 43.5 meters, and a load capacity of more than 300 tons. It has a very strong load-carrying flight capability. It can even carry a space shuttle and perform space missions in bad weather. It can be said to be the best transport aircraft in the world. The key is that there is only one. Mawei looked at the Tu-160 bomber and the An-225 transport aircraft in front of him. In addition to feeling visual stimulation, he also felt the powerful research and development capabilities of the former Soviet Union. This group of world-class military scientists was born for the military. If there is a chance in the future, we must catch them to Russia, to develop military weapons together. Then, if there is a chance, Mawei also wants to provide resources, to help the government eliminate those terrorists in the Middle East. By the way, earn some justice resources, and bring peace to the world. The Tu-160 bomber looks very handsome, and the An-225 also has a visual impact. Major General Balevov, it's time for us to talk about the prices of these fighters and transport planes. The tour has been completed, and the next topic of this visit is how much the fighters sell for. If Mawei wants to buy the Tu-160 series strategic bombers as a private collection, he must remove the engine. Although the Tu-160, Tu-22, and Tu-95 long-range strategic bombers must be equipped with nuclear warhead missiles to be terrifyingly powerful. Without nuclear bombs, it is an advanced bomber. But if this type of aircraft is circulated to nuclear weapon countries other than Russia and Ukraine, it will definitely cause panic worldwide. Because the attack range of the bomber is calculated based on the southern hemisphere and the northern hemisphere. Assuming that North Korea later had even one Tu-95 bomber, then its deterrence will definitely increase several times. Not only Japan and South Korea are afraid of it, but even the United States across the ocean has to think twice. Hearing Mawei asking about the price, Major General Balevov smiled and answered very competently, "That's right, Mr. Mawei, I'll tell you the price directly. For fighters like the Su-27 fighter, MiG-29 fighter, and Su-25 fighter, the current price is buy two get one free. The average unit price is $1.5 million per aircraft. As for the Tu-160 supersonic bomber, the price is $3.2 million per aircraft. The Tu-22 and Tu-95 supersonic bombers are $2.3 million per aircraft. The price of the An-225 super transport aircraft is $4.6 million. After listening to Major General Balevov's offer, Mawei felt like he had come to a new world. MiG-29 fighter, buy two get one free? Question mark. Is this a clearance sale? Question mark. And it's $1.5 million per aircraft. Oh my god, why sell it so cheap? Question mark. The Ukrainian Air Force is so short of money. Chapter 124 The reason for selling so cheaply. In 1994, Russia sold Malaysia 16 MiG-29 and single-seat fighters and 2 MiG-29 nub-to-seat fighter trainers for $600 million. In the end, the price was bargained down to $560 million, but the quality was not very good. In 1998 and 2004, one MiG fighter crashed. This made the Malaysians dare not buy arms from Russia. After hearing the offer, Mawei took a long time to recover. But he thought about it again. It was right. The EU spent $15 million and hundreds of millions of loans, that is, lending money to Ukraine, to let Ukraine destroy nuclear warheads and bombers. This, compared with the buy two get one free fighter, it is simply a small witch compared to a big witch. Seeing Mawei pondering over there and not speaking, Major General Balevov mistakenly thought that Mawei thought the price was a bit expensive. So he added an extra explanation. Mr. Mawei, our price is already very cheap. I think you should know that. Major General Balevov actually had another sentence that he didn't say. That is, if Mawei doesn't want these fighters, then the Ukrainian government will also reduce the Air Force inventory at the end of the year. To reduce the maintenance expenses for the coming year. In short, they can't afford to keep them in Ukraine and have to throw away the planes. Instead of selling them as scrap metal, it's better to sell them to Mawei, who has a good relationship with them, at a low price. In this way, just as Major General Balevov was explaining to Mawei anxiously, Mawei held back his excitement and spoke lightly, pretending that he didn't take advantage of the situation. I understand, Major General Balevov. Then, are all the planes in this warehouse for sale? Yes, Mr. Mawei, the higher-ups asked me to bring you to this military warehouse for trading. Major General Balevov didn't understand why Mawei asked this question. But the next second, he and the Air Force officer standing behind him suddenly understood. Well, Major General Balevov, I want all the planes in your warehouse. Tu-95, Tu-22, Tu-160, MiG-29, and Tu-125. Please help me calculate the price. Mavey said to the Ukrainian Air Force in a loud voice. As soon as he finished speaking, Major General Balevov and the Ukrainian officer standing in front of him were surprised and stunned for a moment. Mr. Mavey, did you just say that you bought all of these? Major General Balevov repeatedly confirmed with Mavey. Before the reception, the superior's task for the Major General was to sell $15 million of aircraft, which would be considered a perfect completion. But what Balevov never expected was that Mavey actually opened his mouth and took away all the unsellable inventory of their entire base. This is really bold. Yes, Major General Balevov, how much is it in total? Mavey didn't think he was bold, because this is completely robbing the Ukrainian Air Force. When Asian countries officially buy aircraft carriers from him, Mavey can sell these super cheap fighters to those countries in a package. The MiG-29 fighter, buy 2 get 1 free, originally priced at $1 million can be sold for $25 million. It's so cool. In total, I'll calculate it for you, Major General Balevov said, and immediately glanced at Colonel Sheeny beside him. He meant to quickly calculate how much the planes in the entire warehouse cost. To be honest, because the Ukrainian Air Force didn't expect that someone would be so rich as to buy the entire warehouse. So they really didn't calculate the total amount of the planes. 2 Tu-160 supersonic bombers, $6.4 million. 12 Su-27 fighters, $12 million. Colonel Sheeny kept calculating the prices in his mind, and it was not until a long time later that he was able to make a complete calculation. Major General Balevov, the total prices are $68.9 million. Colonel Sheeny said softly to the Major General. After hearing this, Major General Balevov nodded with satisfaction, and then told Mavey the total amount. It's like this, Mr. Mavey, these fighters, bombers, and transport planes in the warehouse are a total of $68 million. The Air Force Major General also deliberately erased a fraction for Mavey, which was $900,000. This was all because Mavey bought a lot at one time, and he also gave them Dongfeng Mengshi military vehicles. Okay, no problem, Mavey said casually without blinking. The Ukrainian officers standing in front of him were secretly shocked. They had never seen such a rich and courageous arms dealer. Haha, great, Mr. Mavey, thank you very much for this cooperation. Major General Balevov extended his right hand excitedly. The task assigned to him by the superiors this time was completed perfectly. I believe that, when the results are reported, those Air Force Lieutenant Generals and Air Force Generals will be very happy to hear it. You're welcome, Major General Balevov. Mavey also smiled and extended his right hand. In fact, he should be the one to say thank you. Just now, he roughly calculated that there were a total of 12 Su-27 fighters, 11 MiG-29 fighters, 9 Su-25 attack aircraft, 4 Su-24 fighter bombers, 2 Tu-160 supersonic bombers, 4 Tu-22 bombers, and 5 Tu-95 strategic bombers parked in the military warehouse. There is also the An-225 super transport aircraft, which is the only one in the world. The amount is indeed around $68 million. After buying these military aircraft, Mavey estimated that he could make at least $1.5 billion by reselling them. He plans to invest the money he earns in a security company, and then slowly develop the nature of the company into a mercenary group. Then when the Iraq war breaks out, and the Middle East terrorist crisis breaks out, his mercenary group will definitely be reused by the Russian government. Then Mavey's status will be different. As for the Tu-160, Tu-22, and Tu-95 long-range strategic bombers that he bought cheaply, Mavey will definitely send a few to the Russian Air Force. For the rest, he will remove the engines and send them back to his base. If necessary, he also wants to buy an island specifically and develop it into his own military base for storing weapons and training mercenaries. After purchasing $68 million of military aircraft from the Ukrainian Air Force, Mavey's bank deposits dropped sharply from the original $385 million to $317 million. After returning to the Ukrainian hotel, he called his butler Ivan into the room and said, "Ivan, send someone to contact the Russian Air Force and tell them that I have a big gift for them." Supersonic strategic bombers are a hot potato for Mawey now. If he fails to do it right, he will get into trouble. Chapter 125 The Frightened Air Force Colonel. Okay, master, I got it. The butler took the order and left. He knew that Mawey's decision was quite correct. This way, he would not get into trouble and could also establish relations with the Russian Air Force. 2 days later, the Russian Air Force headquarters, which received Mawey's invitation, sent an Air Force colonel to Ukraine to see what the gift he mentioned was. Since the transaction of fighter jets and bombers was reached between Ukraine and Mawey, the Russian Air Force did not know the news for the time being. However, the Russian intelligence department is not a vegetarian. They should be collecting relevant intelligence. So Mawey must send these strategic bombers with engines as soon as possible, lest he get into trouble and be killed by Putin. As soon as the Boeing plane carrying the Russian Air Force colonel landed at the Ukrainian airport, Mawey took the Dongfeng Mengshi military vehicle to receive the Air Force colonel named Valentin and the sergeant accompanying him. Hello, Colonel Valentin. Thank you very much for visiting Ukraine at such a fast speed. Mawey smiled and stretched out his right hand to shake hands with the other party. But during the process, he saw that this Colonel Valentin didn't seem to care much about him. Not only was his attitude cold when shaking hands, but they also rarely communicated. Mr. Mawey, tell me, you called us all the way here. What do you have? Do you want to give it to our Air Force? Colonel Valentin had never dealt with Mawey before, so his attitude was a bit bureaucratic. He wanted to use his status as an Air Force colonel to put on airs in front of him, an arms dealer. After all, in the eyes of the army, businessmen like Mawey can be wiped out in minutes. But at this moment, Mawey spoke lightly and said to Valentin, "It's nothing, just 2 Tu-22 bombers and 3 Tu-95s." As soon as the calm voice fell, Colonel Valentin, who was standing in front of him, almost popped his eyes out. Obviously he was shocked. What? 222 to 95 strategic bombers? Mr. Mawey, are you kidding me? Colonel Valentin was so surprised that he stuttered. This was the first time in his life that he had seen an arms dealer who gave away 222 supersonic bombers. The key is that he gave away 5 of them. It was so terrifying for him, an Air Force colonel. I'm not kidding. If you don't believe me, you can go to the warehouse with me. After Mawey said that, he led Colonel Valentin and others to the Ukrainian military warehouse. However, when they got there, Colonel Valentin, who was standing next to Mawey, was shocked to find that the Ukrainian engineers in the warehouse were actually dismantling the engines of the Tu-160 and Tu-22 supersonic bombers. And they were not just dismantling 1 or 2. Obviously, many engines had been dismantled. What's going on, Mr. Mawey? Colonel Valentin asked Mawey in great surprise. For a moment, he even thought that the Ukrainians were deliberately joking with them. But when he looked closely, these Kuznetsov NK321 afterburning turbofan engines were all genuine. Maximum thrust of 14 metric tons. Afterburning thrust of 25 metric tons. Such top-level engines have not even been developed by the Americans. Now that they are removed from the plane, it really makes him, an Air Force colonel, feel that it is a waste of resources. It's okay, Colonel Valentin, they are removing the engine of my plane. The 5 that are sent to your Air Force are over there, Mawey said, pointing to the right side of the warehouse. Indicated that the 5 supersonic bombers were kept for them. Colonel Valentin was completely confused by what was happening in front of him. So many Kuznetsov NK321 afterburning turbofan engines were dismantled alive. It really made him feel both heartbroken and helpless. What was heartbreaking was that he couldn't bear to part with these top-level equipment. Unfortunately, these planes were not his, and he could not change the current situation. Mr. Mawey, thank you for your contribution to our Russian Air Force. Mr. Mawey, my attitude just now was not very good. Please forgive me, Mr. Mawey. Finally, Colonel Valentin had to extend his right hand and take the initiative to shake hands with Mawey and apologize. Now he can no longer treat Mawey with a bureaucratic set. After all, even the most stupid people know that once these 5 supersonic bombers are sent back to Russia, Mawey's status and position in the Russian Air Force will surely rise. It's okay, Colonel Valentin. As the saying goes, Forgive others when you can. Mawei is not the kind of chicken-hearted person who keeps staring at people. To do big things, you must not be fussy about details. This principle can be seen from his removal of the NK321 engine. Mawei understands it all. After successfully solving this batch of hot potatoes in his hands, Mawei can finally relax and tinker with his own business. Mawei can give the two 160 into 22 bombers without engines to sports car manufacturers, who can then design gorgeous supercars based on the appearance of the fighter planes. Just like the Lamborghini Reventon, it will become a classic for generations. Similarly, he can also modify those two 160 bombers. Whether they are collected at home or sold to those military enthusiasts and wealthy businessmen, there is no need to worry about sales. As for another batch of MiG-29 and Su-27 fighters, Mawei kept some of them and placed them in the Black Sea shipyard, waiting to be packaged and sold together with the aircraft carrier. He has also decided who to sell the remaining few to, that is. Ivan, does your family have any business or connections in Malaysia? It would be best if you can talk to the Royal Malaysian Air Force. After returning to Russia, Mawei called the butler and asked, Malaysia in this life did not buy fighter planes from Russia, so it was an opportunity for Mawei. Ivan thought for a moment and replied, Master, it seems that there should be. I'll send someone to contact them. Yeah. Oh, by the way, let Marvel choose a film company that can cooperate. I may want to invest in a movie. While the family was contacting the Royal Malaysian Air Force, Mawei wanted to save time and invest in the Marvel movie. After all, with the hot trailer of Avengers, many netizens and fans around the world are now concerned about when the feature film will be shot and when the movie will be released. Okay, Master, I know. I'll do it right away. Butler Ivan said very sincerely. Yeah. Mawei finished speaking and stretched. Then, under the gentle service of the maid, he lay on the bed and fell asleep. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.